Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube. And the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels, Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars, A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many-hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft, and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Table Talk on an unusual Sunday night, but that's because we've got things to talk about here. We want to talk about Ahsoka and what's been happening in episode 4 and 5, and so we thought about coming on, going and talking about that now, rather than talking about that on Tuesday when the new show is coming out. Coming out for episode, was that episode 6? Oh, you love the new intro. Yes, new intro. I made that yesterday. I made a new intro for the show and also then cut that into a new trailer for the entire channel. So we've got 2 guests tonight coming on. First, Douglas A. Burton. Hello, Doug. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. And you're on the intro now. I made up that intro, the original intro, several months ago, and then like next week you started becoming a regular. So now
Perfect timing.
you were in the and then also for her first time on the show. Now she's been on Dinner and Board Game with us, but the first time on Table Talk, Retro Nerd Girl. Welcome.
Hi guys. Hi everybody.
All right, it's so great having you on Table Talk tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I jumped at the chance, so thank you for inviting me.
Awesome.
All right. Doug, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm going to bring up over here and put your link out because I know you wrote this on your YouTube, on your channel.
Oh, yes. My name is Douglas Burton, and I'm an author. I wrote a historical fiction novel about a Byzantine empress. It was an award-winning novel, so I'm very proud of that. However,
that's right here.
What's that?
That's this
yes, that's it. Faraway Bird. And I'm currently working on the sequel to that book right now. While writing it, I ran into problems using the hero's journey for my heroine, and this led me down a rabbit hole of studying heroic women in fiction, from film to novels to comic books to TV series. And I came up with an alternative to the hero's journey, and that book is called The Heroine's Labyrinth, and it comes out in February 2024. I cannot wait for that.
Oh, man.
And then also, so if you want to find out more about that, also you posted a blog about Ahsoka on your main.
I have not been inspired to write a blog in quite a while. And with Ahsoka, there was such different takes on this show. I wanted to carve out a little space to defend the show for what I think is happening. And I wrote my blog. It's on my website, douglasaburton.com. And I believe that a Star Wars moment has arrived. Which way we'll go, we have yet to see.
Oh, and there is a place where you can sign up for over there. If you go to contact, you can sign up for your newsletter.
Yes. Yeah. Come on, sign on up.
All right. And now, Retro Nerd Girl, do you want to introduce yourself? I'll put here's your channel right here.
Oh, yeah, sure. I review a lot of old movies, hence my name, Retro Nerd Girl. And I also do live streams Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. I do a watch party of an old movie. And the last one we did was Soylent Green, 1973.
Nice.
Such a joy. Yes, I have so much fun at those watch parties.
Did you ever find out what Soylent Green was?
You know what? Yeah.
Uh-oh.
It's pretty scary. But yeah, that was a joy for me. I love old movies. So yeah, if you are so inclined to watch a review, definitely do hit up my channel. I've got over 100 of those reviews. So go ahead and check it out.
All right, definitely do go over and subscribe to Retro Nerd Girl's channel. I have a link here for everybody. I am going to relaunch Goodnight Sword on Indiegogo soon. So I just got the landing page up. Goodnight Sword, that's my take on Goodnight Moon, but it is in a world of medieval rabbits. If you have a child, you yourself, a child be interested in medieval fantasy story, and you remember Goodnight Sword from your childhood, well, or Goodnight Moon from your childhood, well, wouldn't you rather them read Goodnight Sword? Well, you probably would. Goodnight Sword, if you would like a free copy of Goodnight Sword, I have got a page up where you can come over here and get a free copy. It's the complete book, PDF of Goodnight Sword. Get a free copy of Goodnight Sword right here. Of Goodnight Sword. And then in maybe a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, someplace in there, I'm going to launch on Indiegogo to do physical hard copy books. But you can, and I'll let you know, if you sign up, you'll sign up to get enter a drawing for a free hard copy the day I go live on Indiegogo. But also, the whole book is right there, PDF. You can read it tonight. It can be your story time. All right. I'm taking that down then. So we're talking about Ahsoka, and Doug also wants to talk about the good parts of Clone Wars that we should be listening to. I don't know as much about Clone Wars. I have watched Clone Wars and some of Rebels. It's been a long time. But so it was kind of good that I came to Ahsoka kind of fresh on that. But I'm completely caught up on Ahsoka and was rewatching it even before this. So, Doug, do you want to start with you kind of called the meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I was a vocal critic of Ahsoka, the series, and I still believe for good reason. There are plenty of flaws in Ahsoka as the new Disney Star Wars series, and I was very disappointed. Ahsoka Tano is one of my favorite Star Wars characters from the Clone Wars animated series. I hold her in very high esteem as far as one of my Star Wars characters and Star Wars heroines. And I really hope that they did something well with the live action series. And boy, my heart was broken watching the first 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. I thought it was extremely dull, poorly written with ridiculous character scenarios. And I heard a lot of people trying to hype it up and saying it was great. And I was like, I don't know what you're watching that you could say that this is great, because it's not. It's just not great. And that's not what I wanted. I really wanted this to work. Episode 3, I thought, was an improvement, though not much. I thought it had cleared up some of the technical filmmaking amateur flaws that seemed to plague the first 2 episodes. And then episode 4, I thought was okay, but it ended very well. I really like the way episode 4 ended, and I'll get into why I think that's important. I got a sense by the end of episode 4 that there's a reset coming. I sensed it. I sensed genuine world building opportunity. I felt that they had taken a slow way up to that, but there it was. And I was like, okay, let's see what they do in episode 5. And I loved episode 5, specifically the parts with Anakin and Ahsoka. I really loved it. I have heard a lot of different opinions on social media, on YouTube, on whether it's good or bad. However, as momentum has carried us through the week, the consensus seems to be definitively that this was well received by the public and that Ahsoka had done something right. And that's why I wrote that article, that a Star Wars moment has arrived. So I felt it was probably worth it for our channel here at Table Talk, or Heath's channel at Table Talk, to discuss it, to address maybe what we think went right, despite all that has gone wrong.
Well, we were quite critical of the first couple of episodes.
Yes, there was a couple YouTube shorts of me like attacking the public.
It deserved it. It deserved it because the first 2 were. I really disliked the first episode with the passion. Sabine in particular was just insufferable. I just couldn't understand what they were doing with that character. But I was starting to like her a little bit more and more as it went on, because I was like, oh, okay, so the show is really centering around this character and not Ahsoka. So it's the Sabine show. And so I was feeling more empathy towards that character by episode 3-ish. And then 4, like you said, definitely was an upgrade. And you can feel like something was happening. They were shifting the focus to now Ahsoka. And building her up as a character. I feel like I know her a little bit more after episode 5. And this was something I felt should have happened in the first episode.
I know we can't like 5 minutes.
Yeah. I know. I don't want to go backwards. We can never go backwards, but it should have happened in the first episode. And it's just taken so long to get here, you know? So I'm like, okay, let's see what happens now, because I did like almost exactly how you described episode 4. Love the ending of that. Love Balin and all of the things that went on with that character, and want to see more. I want to see more of that character, and then just that shift of like, now everything is going to this other universe, this other galaxy, and the curiosity behind what is going to be behind that door, you know?
Yes.
So that's exciting. And also possibly finally meeting Thrawn, this kind of mysterious bad guy that we just haven't gotten a chance to meet. We haven't gotten a chance to get into his mind and to feel like a real threat is happening. So,
yeah, Heath and I discussed Thrawn at length in a prior stream, and we both agreed that the show probably should have started with Thrawn attacking the New Republic, like right off the bat. Show us tactically how he could carve up the New Republic, how he's a genuine threat that the Senate and everyone is taking seriously, but they don't know where he is. And then he comes in again and he slices up another place and gets out. Like, that's conflict. You know, that's conflict. I felt like what cost the prequels for so long was that they opened with a Phantom Menace. There's no conflict, but there will be. In the meantime, we have a trade dispute. And Heath and I always love laughing at that because it's just not that interesting, a trade dispute.
Yes. The trade dispute is probably the sideline to that. That should have been just taken out of the storyline altogether.
100%.
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
good to start with conflict. So I agree with you 100% that it's odd that it's an 8-episode series, and on episode 6, we might finally get the villain revealed. So it's awfully big gamble.
I don't know. Cameron says that they like to do the big penultimate episodes, because I was going, are they going to wait until 8 to show Thrawn? But Cameron said he thought there was going to be episode 7 because they like to do the big penultimate episode.
It's a big gamble with this. See, my thing is this. So I just want to say this. Clone Wars, which is now pretty much universally beloved, started terribly. I don't know if people even remember this. It started with a theatrical release 2-hour or an hour and a half movie. A feature film, and this feature film was awful. People fell asleep. It got $18 million. Like, it was so bad. I saw it, and I was like, I'm not interested in the Clone Wars. It was so bad that I never got caught up back with the Clone Wars for years, and I heard it was good. So it also and Ahsoka was not likable in the film. She was very teeny boppery and annoying, and Anakin's was a little off, and those 6-legged walkers from the prequels, it goes like up a wall. And I'm like, what are we watching? Like, what is this? But despite the terrible start, the Clone Wars found its rhythm and really took off. And but back then, there was an appetite for Star Wars.
Yeah.
To gamble with a slow start with today's audience that is very thin-skinned, very impatient, very quick to pull the trigger on a bad show. Man, they're really gambling with that.
Yeah. And I think the nature of just the way you can do like certain things in animation you just can't do in live action, that I'm noticing that Filoni's kind of carrying over a lot, and that has to do with the pacing, kind of messes with the pacing a lot. But there's also great things that I see that he is very talented in doing. Visually. So I don't know. I would just hope I hope that people that he's working with are helping him to kind of suss through, like, okay, this is working, this isn't working, because he is very talented. I just think he needs some help, some sculpting a little.
I think that's a great point. Part of me suspects that his transition from animation to live action has been a sloppy transition. Something tells me, and I could be totally wrong, that this is going to morph into its own thing here, where he's going to get away from the animated thinking.
Oh, good.
I think that's going to happen, and that we're going to get it's going to kind of find its own identity, because he does seem to understand Star Wars way better than the people over at Lucasfilm understand it. Filoni and Favreau seem to at least understand something about Star Wars. And like I said, I will make the case, the Clone Wars animated series, which Filoni worked on, is some of the best Star Wars besides the original trilogy. For me, like there's some series and episodes that are as good. Like, it's just great Star Wars. So we have the right guy on this. I know there's been a lot of people losing faith in Filoni, but I'm not going to give up on him yet.
Yeah, and I was talking about this with somebody, and it's just kind of like, I hope he doesn't get sort of like how Lucas was with the prequels, where everybody said, "Oh yeah, whatever you want, we'll do it." I think that he should definitely operate with like that, someone else to take a look at this and see if it looks good to them too, because I have this. He's got a lot of great ideas. The thing is that his pacing is off. It takes him a long time to get to the punchline, but when it gets there, it's great.
Yeah, I agree. There were times where I call it "think of something to say" dialogue, where the character was like, "How you doing?" And the other character's like, "Good. Things going good with you?" And it's like, well, let's go. Like, what are we talking about? like
we don't have time for this. Yeah. Well, I was watching episode, was it 3, where we had the training sequence? Is it 3?
Yeah.
I was like, "Do we have time for this right now?" We're like actually like following a lead on like getting the bad guys who has the who are almost going to Thrawn. We don't have time for this. It's good. It was good stuff. It was just in the wrong place, and of course that could have been easily in the beginning that they had already started their training together, but. There's no explanation as to exactly why Ahsoka left Sabine, because they were supposed to be together. They left Rebels. They were together, and then all of a sudden they're not together anymore.
Well,
So
the ambiguous dialogue between them, it's almost like the writers don't know what happened yet. So they're just as a writer, I have made these mistakes. So
okay.
I'm saying, like, when I used to write dialogue and you're like, well, I don't want to reveal that yet. So I'll just have her say this, or I'll have him say this. And it's like, the people reading it are like, why would they be so evasive? People reading your stuff to critique you, and, they'll tell you, they're like, why it doesn't make sense that she's withholding this information. So when I see that level of error on a produced show, I get frustrated because I'm like, this wouldn't even work in my amateur writer circle. How is it being financed by Lucasfilm?
Yes.
Don't they have people advising them, or don't they have someone like the person in my writer circle that says you can't, you have to know as the writer what these people are talking about?
Yeah. And just make every moment count, because you don't have that much time to capture the audience.
Right.
A lot of people, they're out. They're like, okay, the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka didn't work. We're not watching it again. Some people are just refuse to watch it.
When Heath and I were discussing episodes 1 and 2, we could see the chat. They're like, thanks for telling me. I'm not going to watch it. Like, people were out. And
well, I probably would have been out. I mean, I probably wouldn't have watched it, generally speaking, anyway. But you said you were a big fan of Ahsoka, so I was like, hey, let me get on board with this. I'm going to watch it. But I don't know that I would have continued past episode 2.
Well, and who could blame you? I can't sit there and stand in judgment of people who give up on the show. I'm motivated to watch this. I have watched all Star Wars except the last 4 episodes of The Mandalorian. The first time I actually genuinely lost interest, like, not out of protest. It wasn't a statement. I just didn't care enough to watch the next episode. Was in Mandalorian season 3. I didn't even, me and my kids used to wake up and watch it in the morning.
Yeah.
We'd wake up early, even on a school day. We'd wake up a little earlier. We'd watch Mandalorian, high five each other, and then I'd send them off to school. I stopped doing that. And then I stopped watching myself. I was like, there's nothing here. So
yeah, Mandalorian season 3 was a complete loss.
What's that?
I said Mandalorian season 3 was a complete loss.
Oh, okay. So I'm not completely crazy.
No, yeah, they totally wrecked it. And after I saw the Mandalorian season 1 and 2, and just was like, what is this? This is wonderful. The only thing I did not like, though, was the last scene that everybody loved, was when Luke came on board, and I was like, I was like, how are they going to top this?
Oh, well, from that angle, that's a good point.
Yeah, I saw like they're not going to be able to top this, and sure enough, they couldn't top it. It would have been really nice to figure out what they were going to do with Grogu. They didn't, I think they saw, well, look, people really love Grogu, so we're going to make money off this character. And so they couldn't just let him stay with Luke. They had to bring him back into the fold.
Yeah, I got a similar impression where it seemed like the way it moved forward in the Book of Boba Fett. That's where we saw what is the follow-up, what is the aftermath of the big Luke moment, which I loved.
Stupidly.
What's that?
Oh, I said stupidly.
Yeah, so in the Book of Boba Fett, which I thought was horrible, they tried to follow up on it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think retro, like what you're saying, my impression was, okay, these episodes seem like people in a corporate boardroom chose from a menu, keep Grogu,
Yes.
have Luke for one scene, put Ahsoka in the scene, and a side of Boba Fett. You know, it's like they ordered it off a menu, and I was like, this is like hobbled together. It doesn't feel like. and then they kind of went the wrong way with it. You know, he wasn't going to stay with Luke, and Grogu's like I'm going to be a Mandalorian. I'm like, what? You? like 1 foot tall. You're going to be a Mandalorian? Like, who came up with this?
First of all, those episodes should have been in The Mandalorian, not in the Book of Boba Fett.
Correct.
Oh, come on.
I do remember, like, when the Book of Boba Fett was on, I was really excited about it when I saw the Book of Boba Fett trailer after the second season of Mandalorian, because it was a long time before we got it. I was like, oh, because I was enjoying The Mandalorian. And then I was like, oh man, I'm totally going to watch that. But then I was busy when I was trying to, when Boba Fett was coming out. But then I was seeing all this stuff going by on YouTube, and I was like, gee, I just need to watch it. So I put it on while I was working. And that ended up being okay because I didn't think it was all that great. So I was able to watch it as I was working. But then when the Mandalorian episode came on, it was like a complete, like, hypnotic trance. I was working, and all of a sudden, like, the Mandalorian's music hit. And I was like, well,
oh, yeah.
And I just had to stop working and watch what was going on. But those shows should have been in The Mandalorian. And I remember when everybody was wondering what the choice of Grogu was going to be.
Yeah.
They got all of the YouTube, commentary class talking about what the choice of Grogu was going to be for 1 week. And they could have done that for an entire season.
Oh, my God.
Like, that should have been the close of one of the seasons of The Mandalorian. And then people would have been talking about that for an entire year, and they completely blew it.
They totally did. And Heath, that's funny. I remember that too, watching the Book of Boba Fett, being like, man, another dumb Star Wars show. And then I click play, and then, like, isn't he in like a meat locker type of setting? And he kind of just shows up like a Western. I'm like, the Mandalorians and Boba Fett? I was like, oh, cool, a crossover. Then I was like, boy, we're 30 minutes in and there's still no Boba Fett. I was like, is this a Mandalorian episode? Like, I was just thrown off because it was clearly, unequivocally a Mandalorian episode. And it didn't even try to hide it.
They're like, just what's going on in the chat right here. Over on the Table Talk channel. Yes, I went ahead and put Stray on as a moderator, because Stray's a moderator over on the Geekverse channel. And also James is always here, so I went ahead and put James as a moderator too.
James.
If people get too rowdy, you got moderator status over here.
Awesome, like bouncer status with arms folded.
Right. Well, it used to be. I'll tell you, it used to be like when I started all this streaming, and Retro Nerd Girl may remember this. When I started all this streaming, one of the issues was that there were the porn bots that would show up in the chat all the time, and so that was an important part. Like, where are your moderators? Because the porn bots would show up, and then you need to nuke them in the chat. And if I was talking or something like that, one of the moderators could nuke the porn bots. And I integrated the porn bots into the show, actually, because we did a drink. Like, anytime the porn bot shows up, you take a drink, and remember to take a drink. But they must have got that under control, because I haven't seen those in 6 or 8 months, or whatever.
So we can't drink now?
So now we'll have to come up with something else that causes us to drink. But okay, so I don't understand. If you want to go back to like episode 4 or the end of episode, or where you want to go, I don't understand this world between worlds and what's going on with that.
Okay, so
because I had not followed that Rebels or Clone, whichever one it was.
Well, to be perfectly,
so I don't know what's going on.
Right. So to be honest, one of the rules of writing, if you're going to write something that requires some backstory, then it's your job as a writer to include some of the information naturally. I'm having this problem right now. I'm writing book 2 to Empress Theodora, and as I'm doing this, I'm like, I have to set up a scenario. So you have to think of this. You have to conceive this as a writer. Put your characters in a scenario where the topic might come up. And as you're writing, if the topic doesn't come up, you can't force it in there. Maybe it'll come up later. So like the characters will determine whether it comes up. And usually, because these characters are attached to their history, a lot of times something that came up in their past does come up. So you shouldn't have to know about the World Between Worlds or Rebels or Clone Wars in order to appreciate Ahsoka. That is, I'm not going to defend the show on that. Like, if the show can't bring you in and bring you up to date or give you enough information to figure out what the relationship is between Ahsoka and Sabine, then that's the show's fault. The show is failing to write to the level that their audience requires. So the show's not doing a very good job, and I haven't liked it. I think I went on a 20-minute tirade about the idea of finding an ancient map with a modern political prisoner's exact location.
Yes. Yes.
Keith and I were joking. We're like, that's like, post 9/11, looking for Osama bin Laden, and the CIA is like, let's check the Pyramid of Giza to see if the old pharaohs had a clue for where Osama bin Laden could be. So,
Daniel agrees.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was such a problem. Like, it almost made me go crazy for even now it drives me nuts.
It is a big problem with the writing here because you nailed it right on the head. And it's the first thing that happens in the whole story, right? And so it's like that immediately makes you wonder, okay, so how did these ancient people know about Thrawn?
Well, something said to say. So someone argued with me and I usually don't get into arguments on social media because I don't like being negative. I'd rather be positive about things, even if I'm critical. I try to stay
constructive.
I try to stay in the middle. And someone was like, "That's not an ancient map to Thrawn. That's an ancient map that shows the Purgil where they migrate to." And I was like,
"Okay,
is that true?" I rewatched the episode, and that's wrong. The episode says it's the pathway to something, some ancient mythological Jedi pathway to this other galaxy that has been forgotten. And I was like, you still haven't explained how Thrawn got there and what the Purgil have to do with this. That's a massive flaw in the writing. So here we are in episode 4. I feel like at this point, do you ever remember, do you ever see The Incredibles?
Yeah.
Remember when Mr. Incredible is typing and he's inside the inner sanctum and he gets caught and he's running and these giant balls are hitting him and they start to inflate? Remember that? And the balls just keep inflating until he's like stuck inside. Do you guys remember that? There's all these cannons.
No, I need to rewatch it.
It's a security system. As he's running out, these cannons shoot these like sticky balls at him. And when they hit him, they start to inflate. And they start to inflate to the point where he's stuck inside. That's how I felt going into episode 4. It's like you have all this bad writing stuck to you and it's inflating and you're just trying to get through the episode. And it didn't get any better in the beginning of the episode. It was really the end that I was like, I like this lightsaber battle. Like,
yes.
I like Balon.
Yes. He's wonderful. Yeah,
So,
and the actor is doing everything he can with the dialogue. There are some times when he doesn't have anything to say, and all he has are expressions. And it's like, wow, he's trying his hardest to put some kind of complexity to this character. But yet that whole seduction scene, I call it the seduction of Sabine, is so beautiful. I loved it. It was like, oh, okay, wait. This has merit. And he tells her, come with me willingly. And so I was just like, ooh, she has to make a choice, and she's making that choice on her own. He's not forcing her. And so it's like, it just made her character also seem even more interesting in that one exchange. So I did love that part. But I mean, it's a small piece of the cake.
That scene, the seduction of Sabine, as Retro calls it, that's a captivity bargain. It is. So in hero-centric stories, and this could happen outside of hero-centric stories, but the heroine is asked to voluntarily go into captivity. That it's a classic trope in hero-centric stories, and that scene works, I think, because of the archetypal resonance. And I, like you just pointed out, willingly, he specifically said, we're not going to force you. He actually, it's a great scene because I thought it was kind of funny where she holds the ball hostage. Ahsoka's like, shoot it. And she's like, I'm going to get this thing. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, come on.
Yes.
It was something similar, but not that. But it's interesting. He like looks up and like uses the Force. He makes a cold read on her. And I heard from somewhere it's a dark side power of reading, getting an impression of what you want or something. And he takes his lightsaber off. He turns it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he approaches her. So he is not approaching her in a threatening manner. To your point, Retro, I was like, oh, interesting. Like that's got some nuance to it.
Yeah.
He's actually, I'm like, okay, so now it's up to the writers. You have to convince us that he can do this non-violently. And I thought they did. It's a captivity bargain. He's like, come with me. He's like, we have a common goal to go to this galaxy. Why don't we work together and follow me? I can do what your mentor won't do. Even if we don't trust each other, we're at least momentary allies. Yeah. And then the next scene, she's in handcuffs. So I was like, oh man, that's a perfect captivity bargain for this heroine, Sabine, who I thought had been very poorly written until episode. There's some parts in episode 3 I didn't mind. Some. And then I thought she was a little bit more interesting in this sequence at the end of episode 4.
Yeah, she hasn't been this is the most interesting she's ever been. But here's this dumb part of the story, and I will be very blunt about it. She says she's going to destroy it, and then gives it to him, and then he destroys it.
He destroys it.
Wait a minute, what that was?
Oh yeah. Well, I guess.
Why didn't you just let her destroy it then? You're out. Like.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, at that point, call her. Actually, now that you're pointing that out, the better dialogue would have been to call her bluff. Destroy it. You'll destroy your own future. Whatever. Something. Calling her bluff instead of the seduction. It still works, but you're right. That's a problem. He doesn't keep it for anything, and they bring it up multiple. Even in episode 5, which I liked, they bring it up again, and they also had that thing where
I did like that too.
Grabbed it and it burned her hand, kind of like in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, I thought though that they were, somehow there was going to be print on there and there was a map on her hand, and I was like, okay, well, that's practical. It was used before. We could believe in that. But they went the other route, which is like even more interesting by having the space whales.
Well, it's hard for me to defend the space whales, but they have been introduced before.
Yes.
Like I was talking to my dad about it because I was like, episode 5 is really good. He's like, but whales that go into hyperspace? I was like, yeah.
I've been found. Do they jump? Yeah, they jump into hyperspace.
Yeah,
they're whales, they look like whales. They're purgils, and they are these interstellar creatures, interdimensional, I guess, creatures that are peaceful and majestic the way they're portrayed, and they can go into hyperspace and travel between galaxies. So, and that's obviously very relevant in this because this show is attempting to move Star Wars into a new galaxy as part of our story universe. And apparently this has ties in mythology to the Jedi. So, and
they even had them in Mandalorian season 3. Grogu sees them in the
that's right.
Yeah, while they're in hyperspeed. He can see them outside, and he kind of like goes, "Oh,"
That's right.
It makes like a Google sound. Yeah, and so right. I think they were like slowly telling us that this was going to happen. But look, was it episode 3 where we had Ahsoka go outside into space and then float into the air and slice?
Yeah,
I was lightsaber cartwheel.
We're no longer dealing with the same rules anymore, so I have to let it go because it's just too crazy at this point.
I was negative on that scene. We never got to talk about that, but going back to that one, I was one of the people, like when I was watching that, I was like, how fast did she get that spacesuit on? And then why don't they just stop their fighters and blow that ship up? Like, why do they have to fly by it? It made no sense. I thought it made no sense.
Just shoot at it from a distance and behind, just don't go near the lightsaber.
The ship was actually like dead in space. It wasn't moving anywhere. So it was actually a still ship that they could have blown up easily.
Yeah. In gun terminology, that's called a sitting duck.
Right.
Easiest thing to hit.
They were doing the World War II with the fighters, and it's like, but they don't have to keep moving, which would have been a new thing to kind of show, probably.
Like, it would have been cool to see her deflecting lasers.
Yeah.
I got a kick out of it, and it makes sense, but it still made me laugh that her spacesuit had the sleeves for the extra sleeves for her headgear.
yeah. And then I think I would have loved, even if it was like a rocket, on the back, I was like, okay, it's a rocket, but she's just sort of floating in the middle of space, and there's a lot. I think that they really, I don't really like that very much, but I thought it was funny. I had a ball with the schlock. I enjoyed it. I did. It's schlock, I call it. So
yeah. One of the things, and I hate admitting this because they're called member berries, but I did like seeing Home One, the ship from Return of the Jedi, the giant Mon Calamari cruiser. That showed up in episode 4, and they call it Home One in dialogue, and they showed a couple times. So it was cool to see it. Again, member berries alone aren't going to do it. If you're going to use something that is, you can use something familiar.
Yeah.
So just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's a member berry unless it has no other connection to the plot. So, and this kind of falls into that. We don't necessarily have to have that, but they did have it in episode 4. Thought it was cool to see, but that's where we have Hera again, Heath, where again, she doesn't act like a general to me. I'm sorry, but a general is a military commander, which means you are in charge of millions of lives who have to follow your orders. And she treats it like she got a VIP pass backstage at a concert. She's like, woo, I can get past here.
What's the point of being a general if you can't do something?
She always makes comments like, it's fun being a general and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I have never heard Douglas MacArthur sound like that in an interview, or actual generals just don't get a kick out of it. It's a big responsibility that can destroy their career. They can make the wrong choice. You could lose a war for your culture that leads into the destruction of or bombing of your culture. Like, it's not fun to be a general, I don't think. And she treats it like it's kind of fun and silly and not really to be taken seriously. And she's awfully young, I think, also to be, or she looks young anyway, to be a general.
And the other piece was, one of the things that I said that was about episode 4 was that, she's got her kid right there with her right in the middle of a battle or a possible battle. Like, this is a very scary situation. They could be, coming up against Thrawn, and there's her son right there. I was very surprised by that. I was happy that he eventually made himself useful in the story, that he wasn't just a member berry. Because I was like, why is he here? He's got to be just for the member berries.
Jason.
But yeah, Jason Sindula. And I was really glad that they used him, but I don't think he should be there. I think it was clever to use him, but still it's inappropriate for a child to be out in the middle of warfare, basically.
Well, I mean,
Star Trek: The Next Generation approach to this.
Exactly.
We take our whole family along with us.
Well, but I mean, my kid playing in the street is cause for alarm if a car is within a mile. Or so. I do a lot of driving through residential neighborhoods for my my real job, And if I'm going too fast down a residential road, the moms out there will let me know. Slow down, So, like, I don't know. It does seem pretty flippant to be like, yeah, we're going into a war zone. It's cool. Just you wear your backpack, put on your raincoat. You'll be fine. It does seem pretty casual.
I think so. Yeah. I didn't quite understand that, especially since she knows what war is. She's already lost someone in a war.
Right.
There is a lot to be to ask about these characters, like why are these characters not acting like they are real characters? They don't act like they exist in a real space, and so it's hard for me to care about them.
Totally. Again, from a writing standpoint, when you're writing a scene, usually you get a critique. You don't just write it and it's done. Like, it goes through many drafts, and those drafts have feedback from other writers, and they will let you know. They're like, she said this right here. I don't know why she said that. And I'll think about it. I'm like, yeah, maybe you're right. That's not, and you take it out. You could just tell none of this process has gone on with their script writing over there at Lucasfilm, because just the smallest level of scrutiny would have cleaned up this dialogue, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sold on Hera. I'm not sold on Sabine. Jason did get interesting in episode 5, and we can get to that a little bit.
Yeah.
So we have another lightsaber battle. We have 2 lightsaber battles.
Yes.
And the first one, actually, there's 2.
3, actually, right?
Right. There's 3, but there's 2 in the middle, right? With Ahsoka and medieval guy.
Yes.
What's that guy's name?
Merrick. Yes.
The Inquisitor guy.
Yeah, you pointed out, Heath, that his armor is totally based on
Morlock.
French medieval.
Yeah, it's so jarring to me.
Morlock, yes.
So Ahsoka fights him, and how anticlimactic was that lightsaber fight?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
He's like, he popped the balloon.
Yeah.
However, it was a little bit better. Hati and Sabine actually had an okay lightsaber fight.
Yeah, it was actually good.
Yeah, my only problem was, so when you use choreography on lightsaber fights, obviously you'll swing high, and Heath, you filmed movies. When I was a kid, we used to do this. We would do like bow staff fights. We'd choreograph the heck out of them. So you are pulling punches, but it has to look convincing. So she does a couple where she slices trees, which is cool, but it's over the head of Hati or Sabine, whoever swings it. And I'm like, shouldn't that be like at least head or lower level? Like, to show that.
Yeah.
Because if it's above both characters, then that you're wasting your swing there,
I don't remember choreographing any of that as a kid. I just remember beating each other with sticks.
We would choreograph. We would get these sticks, and we would practice all of these moves until we had it like muscle memoried. And it always looked cool when you filmed it, because it was so fast and everyone's moving and you're jumping and you're coming down, and you know how to block it and all this stuff. So this show, the first couple episodes had really slow lightsaber battles.
Yeah.
And this one sped them up. So I was happy in episode 4 to see a little bit of aggressive lightsaber fight, specifically Hati and Sabine. And then we should probably talk about it too. I really liked Balon and Ahsoka at the end of episode 4.
Mm-hmm. To put it in nicely, he wiped the floor with her.
He did. So totally. So Balon. So Ray Stevenson is the actor that plays Balon Skull, and he has what most of these characters do not, which is presence.
Mm-hmm.
You can put him in a scene just standing there, and your eyes are still kind of drawn to him, and you're like, that guy's dangerous.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to say anything. Like I just look at the guy. He doesn't look like he's scared. He doesn't. He knows how to do stoic. Like that's effective stoicism, because he has presence. If you're stoic with no presence, you're like the guy at the nightclub who's trying to play it cool and just sitting there and play it. you have no presence. Like you're not a mystery to anybody. I've had friends who's like, no, you know, I'm mysterious. And it's like, no, you're not. You're invisible. But this guy is not invisible. Like you're aware of him, and he looks menacing. And I think Retro, you just said it. He wipes, like he comes at her with these like broadsword swings.
Yes. And she cannot block those. Like she's trying. And I love the fact that they put that struggle in for her, because dealing with Morag earlier twice, she's like, you know, obviously superior. And it's very like, it's very like Zen warrior, you know, and she's just better than everybody. But with Balin, it's a little bit different. He's someone she has to contend with. She has to contend with his size, his strength. And I just love, you know, the moment where they're like locked together like that. And he just uses his power to like just push her blade away. And it's like, wow, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
And I really felt at that moment for her. And that was the change. That was the change for me. I was like, okay, now we're feeling something.
Yes.
And that's where I really felt I wanted him to win, but I also wanted her to win too.
Yeah. Well, the big secret with heroines is that the Kathleen Kennedy, or I don't even know if it's just her, but the modern model is like these like super women that they don't have any self-doubt. They're not flawed. They're very effective. They're very confident. And I'm like, that's all good, but all those qualities are fleeting. Even for your great heroes and heroines, I don't know any woman or man that doesn't have self-doubt. So, or questions themselves, or has a low point, or loses. You have to show that, like you just said, the second she's on her heels and she's like, oh no, I don't know if I have this. Yeah. Now we're like cheering for her.
Yeah.
When Rey goes like this and beats Kylo Ren and wins, it's like, wow, I'm almost cheering for Kylo Ren. He seems like the poor chap that needs to grow.
Yeah.
But you're right. She's on her heels on this, and you feel every impact. When he hits, she goes backwards, and there's sparks that fly off the lightsabers. And I was like, wow, this is intimidating, this guy coming at you.
And I did like the way they choreographed her moves as well, because you can see she's using her size to her advantage by staying low. And she's doing a lot of really interesting acrobats, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is good. I want to see more of this. You know, there's actual, like, people are responding to each other. There's consequences, you know. And for a moment there, I was in total bliss. I was like,
So I studied a little bit of sword fight. And it's true in boxing. It's true in martial arts. It's true in sword fighting. It's combinations. So, you know, we think we're just watching people, you know, like minute by minute blocking. That's not what's happening. There's certain steps and positions that you take. And then from that position, you usually do one or two combinations to go in while the other person tries to defend. And this lightsaber battle portrayed them as adjusting. You know, he went this way, and then he stopped and went this way, and then she adjusted her stance. And I was like, this is what a combat would look like. You would have, you know, the starting position before a combination is one thing. And if you change that, then you're changing the sequence of events, and she's reacting to that. So I was like, this almost looks like someone who understands sword fighting, coaching them. And like you said, it looked like a real lightsaber battle, because it looked like he had an actual sword fighting style, and she, you know, she always has a real elegant 1-2 punch with her lightsabers. And I just appreciated watching a lightsaber battle. That
was so good. I really did love it. And what happens kind of afterwards is really quite interesting to me, because it kind of leads into this whole thing of episode 5, where she sees he has her like close to the edge of the cliff, and she sees Shin Hati, you know, come out of the forest, and she's like, Sabine, and then she uses her powers to push Sin Hati to the rocks. And I believe she was using the dark side of the Force. At least a lot of people were talking about that. And possibly she, in her anger, she used the Force. And so, and it also goes back to, and this is what I kind of love about all this, the idea of attachment, because she's attached to Sabine, and otherwise she wouldn't have done that. And then we have Sabine, who's also attached to Ezra, and so that makes her make poor choices. So I do love the title of the show, Fallen Jedi, because at that moment they're both kind of fallen Jedi, in many ways.
Yeah, literally and spiritually.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that her using that the dark side, I think, was very telling of what is to happen, like in episode 5. I think that was a direct result.
Well, and there was something else that this lightsaber battle had that meant something. That I remember when I first watched the prequels, I love the speed and style of the, in Phantom Menace with Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. But I was like, something's missing. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. And I was like, dialogue. There's like when Vader and Luke fought, Vader is seducing Luke. He's like, let go of your, it is pointless to resist. There's the dialogue is part of the combat. And they started to get that right in the later parts of the prequels. And this, and then also it's one thing to have dialogue, but it's another thing for that dialogue to mean something. And Balon here, there's that scene where they're crossed, and he's like, "Your legacy is one of death and destruction," which is going to matter in episode 5, by the way. And this bothers Ahsoka. He got into her head, which is what you're trying to do with lightsaber dialogue. You're trying. Yeah. He's like, "Your legacy is death and destruction. You're Anakin's Padawan. It's your fault. You're part of this. You're part of the problem. Don't blame me." And I was like, oh, so he's zinging her with this dialogue, and it matters, and he's got a point.
And she believes it too.
Yeah. It wouldn't zing if there's no point to it, right?
And I wonder, see, now this is why I always wonder, like, if this is part of the reason why she didn't want to take Sabine on as a Padawan, because of like fear that she was going to mess up. And I can ask myself that question, but why not tell me for sure in the story? Okay.
You just nailed it. In episode 1, have Sabine say, "Why did you quit the training?" And have Ahsoka say, "I'm not going to train anybody. We don't know what we're doing. When we did know what we were doing, we got it wrong." Give me a good answer to that question.
Yes.
And was she trained in the Clone Wars or Rebels or whatever?
Rebels.
In Rebels. Okay, so there is that history.
So, believe it or not, Sabine gets the dark saber, which is big in The Mandalorian.
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay, yes.
And there's scenes with Kanan and Sabine practicing with the dark saber. So Sabine has a really cool backstory that is completely blacked out in this show. It's almost like it's almost like they're calling her Sabine, but it's not really Sabine. It just feels like a new character.
Not for nothing, but they did destroy the Darksaber in Mandalorian 3. So it's like, I mean, it's almost like they're like, okay, let's everything that people knew from the Rebels, let's resculpt it a little bit. So I think that was the mistake, was like, give us, like, actually, if you're going to use this stuff, actually, like, make it matter, make it matter. Like,
it reminds me of like J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, like, erasing each other's threads through the sequel trilogy. Like, they would hand him the lightsaber. You're like, oh my God, what gravity! And then he's like, who cares about that? And I'm like, oh, that writer just took that one. And then when they killed Snoke, I was like, oh, this writer doesn't care about any of that setup. I was like, wow. I was like, where is this going to go? And the answer, of course, was nowhere. So you're right. That's another example where it seems like a competing vision for Star Wars got in there and said, we're not going to use this Darksaber.
Yeah.
Think of something else. And it's like,
we're gonna make Sabine a Jedi.
And she's not a very interesting one. The most interesting thing they did, in my opinion, was in this episode 4. She's fighting Hatai, and Hatai knocks her down, and Sabine goes like this and like tries to force push her, and Hatai reacts to it, and she's like, "You've got no power."
Yeah,
I like that. I don't know why. I haven't really analyzed why I thought that was good, but there was something about being Sabine, who we've heard is terrible, live up to the reputation of not being good with the Force. It made me actually feel a little sympathy for her because she tried and failed. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, the actress who's playing that Shin Hatai, I kind of like her. I
like her a lot too.
She is going a little over the top in the way that I like, where she's like, "You have no power." Like she's really giving it like a performance. And I was like, I'm kind of like intrigued by this act. She's pretty, which is nice. It's nice to have beautiful people on screen, but also she's trying to give us a performance that I think is serious. Like she's trying to seriously convey this character, and her raw emoting plays off very well with Baylan Skoll's utter composure.
Yes.
Stoicism.
Oh yeah, I love those two together. And when something that I noticed was that when Shin Hati is thrown against the wall, Baylan kind of goes a little loco. He really then pushes Ahsoka off the edge, so to speak.
Right.
And it's like he there must be something going on there. They must be related or something. There's some kind of strong relationship between the two.
You're right. Yeah, it's like Papa Dragon got mad there.
yeah, he was fast.
You leave Hati alone.
Yeah.
But so to get back to one of your earlier points, I mean, Baylan knocks Ahsoka off the edge of that cliff, and it's not a flattering moment for Ahsoka Tano. She looks like she's back on her heels. She looks like she's defeated. She looks like she's overpowered. And then the coup de grace, he knocks her off, and you're like, she had no answer to this guy. Yeah. So that endears me to the character much more than her winning right off the bat. And that's pretty much where episode 4 ends with Ahsoka. She falls. She's the fallen Jedi in the literal sense here. And, and Baylan's just like, let's get the key. We have, he's not selling. He's just like, okay, he's very collected even in victory.
Yeah. I did love that. But, for episode 4, the thing that really kind of, before we get to episode 5.
Okay. I have things to say before 5.
Yeah. Elsbeth, she, at this point in the story, is really fading as a character. I'm just not in the beginning of the series, I was actually more impressed with her and curious about her. She's like, "Oh, I'm a survivor." And so it's like, okay, this sounds good. I want to know about that. But it's been like so many episodes since we even got a peep out of her.
That's a good point. Yeah, she's very background in episode 4. Is she even in episode 5? No, she's not.
Is she? No. Oh,
no, because they go off into hyperspace, and we don't go back to them at all in episode 5.
Yeah, you're right.
So you're right. She's. I think one of the flaws is, so they bring up witchcraft and witches in episode 4, which is established in Star Wars canon, and I'll talk about it later. But Clone Wars does a great job of. They're called the Witches of Dathomir. The Night Sisters.
Yeah.
And
there's some guys.
They're awesome characters.
Yeah.
And I think that so when you can't just walk into Star Wars and say witches, what are we talking about?
Which is what it sounded like to me, because I didn't know the Witches of Dathomir.
There you go.
To me, in this show, we walked into Star Wars and said witches.
Boom. There you go. What? Witches?
Yeah.
What do we got? Goblins coming next and ghouls. So now Clone Wars took witches and introduced them correctly. They slowly introduced them. They didn't just say witches. They showed that these are Force users. They have a different take on the Force. It's a society of all women, which is very interesting. They have a hierarchy with a mother at the top. And they use bows and arrows, like the archer huntress motif in a lot of hero and warrior stories. And they're in Asajj Ventress, another great character from the Clone Wars. She started as a witch of Dathomir and becomes a Sith Lord, or tries to. So they earned it in the Clone Wars. They built it up. They built stories around it to help you understand it. And this show skips all that and says witches. And so we don't know what that means. We don't know who she is, what culture she's attached to. We know nothing about her. So I think that's part of the reason why this character is kind of getting stale, because what else is she doing in this show?
Yeah. And why on earth is she so desperate to help Thrawn, her lord or whatever? What kind of deal?
Yeah, there's no tie there.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because I want to like that character. She's very interesting, but we're not getting any doors into who she is.
Well, and she was in a Mandalorian episode as this character.
Yeah.
And she fought. Did she fight Ahsoka?
She did. She fought her with a Beskar lance, if you will.
And that was the episode that Michael Biehn Hicks.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. He was in that episode. It was like instant pleasure seeing Michael Biehn again. And that episode always stuck out in my head. But yeah, Elsbeth was introduced in The Mandalorian in an Ahsoka episode. So, you're right. Now that I think about it, they should be able to get some more mileage off her.
I think so. She's very unused and misused by not even using her. Or giving us any kind of backstory as to why is she doing what she's doing.
Well, and the Night Sisters used their powers, and they seemed like they were good at it in a way that Jedi and Sith were unaccustomed to dealing with. So they always seem to have a little bit of like an angle on the Jedi and Sith in the Clone Wars. And I don't get any of that in this from her. Yeah.
And also, there's rumors out there that perhaps Morak was actually one of her creations, because when he dies, there's like a green smoke that comes out of him.
Yes.
And so, if so, like one line would have really helped. Like, oh, here's my servant. Take him on your travels.
Totally.
Like how long did that take? That wasn't a minute. That was like a half a second for me to say that. And it's like, why are we getting an incomplete story?
Totally.
It's not complete.
Well, and the witches of Dathomir in Clone Wars, they would build these like Savage Opress, and they would tell him almost like a Manchurian candidate. They would give him a command, they would give him an agenda, and then they would hide it and send him off. And that was compelling to me. So if you're right, if Elsbeth was like, go out into the woods and find them, right there, we understand that there's a master-servant warrior relationship here, and she's calling the shots, and this guy follows her bidding. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
And it would give us a clue.
Well, for about two weeks, the entire internet was trying to find out who Mark was. So it's just some guy. Yeah, he's just some guy.
That's like Snoke, where everyone's trying to figure out Snoke, and they're like, he's dead. It's like,
don't worry about it.
You don't do that. Don't do that. Like, from a writing standpoint, what are you thinking?
So actually, I'm watching by it as we go. The reason that it was important that Sabine handed over that orb was that their calculations were not complete. So if Sabine had destroyed it there, that actually would have been a problem.
Okay.
And he puts it back on the pedestal, and all the stars pop up. And then that sends, I guess, calculations to the witch up on, and then he destroys it after the witch gets the calculations.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
So there is that.
That's true.
Okay.
Good point.
But my point is, it's been very interesting listening to your take on the lightsaber battles and most of what's been going on in episode 4, because I felt as I was watching this that I didn't think anybody was at risk that I cared about. And I had forgotten that the medieval armor guy got cut in half and hissed away. I forgot that happened. I was like, oh, and then I was watching by as it was going on. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. I guess it's because I didn't care about him all that much. But I didn't feel that any character, and there was a lot of lightsaber fighting in episode 4, but I never felt that they were in any risk. And that might be because, as Daniel's has brought up in the comments much earlier on, we've already established that being run through by a lightsaber, you can still be just fine the next day.
Daniel.
I never felt that anybody was at risk or that there was something serious going on during all these lightsabers. They're fun. I thought they were fun. Okay, you got lightsabers, we're fighting, but I thought that we're missing something because I didn't feel gravitas that, oh, we're about to have a lightsaber battle. Somebody can get dismembered. Somebody's about to die. This is an important sequence. It's flashy. It's fun. It's Star Wars, I guess, now that we got lightsaber battles and all of that. When Ahsoka, you're talking about Ahsoka at the end of this, before we get to the big reveal at the end of episode 4, and she's tossed off that cliff, I had no idea that the implication there was that she was supposed to have died. I did not pick up on that at all, because she goes, and falls off that. I'm like, Jedi survived that all right. Like, I had no, like as I was watching that, I had no idea that was supposed to imply that she was dead. Like, none.
You're so right. You're so right.
So yeah, believe it or not, Heath, I agree, because I didn't really understand that until I saw episode 5.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know, because you watched episode 5. It's like, oh, she's supposed to be dead. I mean, I just thought you got knocked off something and you force jumped. Like there was. So I thought that it was suffering from Star Wars, and I know this is gonna be something that goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Like, there's no lightsabers. Oh, there's too much lightsabers. Whatever. I know, but here in this case, I would say, listen, we got too much of this. When these things come out, the audience needs to pay attention and know this is a very serious moment in the story.
Yes.
And I think we've lost that. And it's not just in this particular episode, but I think to me, it manifested a lot in this episode, perhaps coming off of the Speen being stabbed thing.
Well, in the original trilogy and in the prequels, every lightsaber battle ended with serious consequences. Somebody either got dismembered or killed. Qui-Gon was impaled. That was the end of him. Darth Maul was cut in half. Luke's hand gets cut off. Obi-Wan Kenobi is sliced. Even in the cantina, when Obi-Wan pulls it out, he cuts off
this guy's arm coming off. Right?
When Anakin lights it in the Sand People, he slaughters them. Like, you're right. Every time they use a lightsaber, somebody pays a price. Yeah. And that was almost one of the subtle messages and themes in Return of the Jedi. When Luke slices off Vader's hand in a rage, he sees the missing limb. He looks at his missing limb, and the message seems to be, this is the dehumanizing effect of using of this conflict. You will slowly lose your humanity and become either more machine-like and lose your soul in this conflict. And so now you get someone stabbed with a lightsaber, and it's like,
I actually blame this on Obi-Wan. As much as I love that series, I know a lot of people don't like that series.
I didn't like it.
It did ruin the whole idea of what happens when you get stabbed by a lightsaber. People just pop up and keep going.
Man, that sucked. Yeah, this might have been the worst offense ever, because believe it or not, I had a little intrigue when Sabine was stabbed in episode 2. I was like, oh, some consequences. And then episode 3, she's like hanging out in the hospital, and I'm like, no way. They're not going to make this a flesh wound, are they? And she was like, let's go. And I'm like, dude, you were impaled.
Yeah.
With like superheated energy. Like, just sticking it in your body would start to burn. You're done.
Absolutely. Yes. It's no longer dangerous. It's no longer a big deal. And you're absolutely right, Heath. It's Star Wars for kids now. It's not the same, because you can't kill off any characters because they'll only bring them back. Look what they did to with Darth Maul. He's back. Darth Maul came back. They're just, Boba Fett.
Boba Fett came back, yes.
Yeah, he was dead. He died. Okay, he was in the Sarlacc pit, and now he's back. So they cannot kill anybody because they want to continue to milk these characters for everything that they are worth. But they're sacrificing story. They're sacrificing people really feeling invested into these characters and loving them unconditionally, like how we used to love the original characters, and even Anakin. I still have a warm spot in my heart for Anakin. So it's like having a lightsaber battle doesn't mean you're going to die. You're not going to lose any armed limbs, and it's okay. You could just bounce right back.
Just take 2 Tums, and you'll be fine.
I don't want to
downplay
the difficulty of this from the story perspective, because a lot of people equate Star Wars with things like lightsaber fights. And okay, we're getting more and more Star Wars now. Sable Phoenix was actually talking about, and I kind of agree with it. Well, now what we're going to TV shows, and Star Wars might arguably be better if there were just the big set piece movies that you're looking for every 2 years. Although they didn't actually do that all that well, but then you could have had that. But if you're trying to do TV shows, what is it that people want out of Star Wars? And I see this on social media, and I can't completely. I don't think it's not wrong. I mean, people enjoy TV shows and movies for a whole bunch of different reasons. So the reasons why people enjoy things is not wrong. But you hear people who say that. Look, I love this. You got lightsaber battles. You got the starfighters. You got laser blasts. What's not to love about that? Mm-hmm. So I understand that, especially if you're going to do a lot of TV shows, I understand that. Well, what have we got to put in light? And we got to put every couple of episodes. They need to fight in lightsabers, and have a cool lightsaber battle, and we've got to get some cool choreography. I recognize those things are in conflict, and I do think about it from my writing. I mean, I think there are things to be learned about that story structure, about story. From what's happening to lightsabers. Do you really want another TV show where you have to do that? Exposing things that should not be exposed, like what I mean by that, Boba Fett. That Boba Fett's a really cool character because you don't know a lot of about him. So an obvious thing to do is, hey, let's make a whole TV show about him.
Destroy the mystery.
But then as soon as you destroy the mystery, all of a sudden he's not as cool anymore. And I realize there's that tug of war back and forth when you're trying to write something. But I think that it would be better if it were more on the other side, the reserved side of things.
Yeah. Well,
and I hope that in the future, if it ever matters, that I'll be able to pull that off.
The best thing a writer can do is have consequences. Because when you're writing a chapter, you're not just writing a cool scene, you're setting up where this is going, the small plots, the big plots, you're doing multiple things at once. And if after 3 or 4 chapters, nothing happens of consequence, then you're losing your audience. And 2, you've also said when you start to set up your next thing, who cares? Because nothing happened the first time so when I'm setting something up, the best thing I could do is have something serious occur, because you're telling your audience, pay attention. Because this is the kind of thing that could be a result. This person was disgraced after all of this. This is a terrible outcome for your character. Now people are like, oh man, like the writer's willing to do this terrible thing to these characters. Now you've got our attention because you are having consequences to what you've set up. When you stab someone with a lightsaber and pull it out, and the person wakes up the next day and is like hopping off the bed, you are telling us that the next lightsaber battle, like you said, Heath, it's harder to get invested in it because, well, I guess if you cut off the hand, it'll just grow back, like regenerate, or like in Monty Python where the head starts talking and you just put it back on and you're good to go. You have to have consequences. And the more dire the consequences, that's part of the beauty of writing. You create something, a story with dire consequences, and then you force your characters to move past that terrible moment. And then there's more dire consequences. And like something like Breaking Bad, some of the best shows continue to have dire consequences over and over again. And people can't look away from the screen.
Yeah. And that sometimes means that you're going to have to actually kill off permanently really great characters, and it's going to hurt. That's what it's supposed to do.
Look at
That's
Game of Thrones.
yeah.
Retro Nerd Girl, I'll also say you say permanently kill off, but also there's the element of permanently changing relationship dynamics.
Mm.
And you see this sometimes, that we're going to have this consequence, and maybe they don't die. I mean, sometimes you've got death, and that needs to be permanent in almost all cases. But you can have something happen, even if it doesn't result in the death of a character, but that it permanently changes the dynamics between that character and another character or characters. And if you've got some kind of good dynamic going on between characters that the audience likes, and then you have something that happens that should be really significant, it should be a major change. And Brianna and I have talked about this when we're writing. There does seem to be an instinct to go, but the audience really liked the relationship between the characters before that happened. So we're going to reset that relationship so that we can have that some more for another season, kind of like resetting the relationship between the Mandalorian and Grogu. And I haven't gotten into the third season of Mandalorian, but there should be a dramatic change. But then what we were talking about, hey, but wait a minute, Mando and Grogu, their relationship was so cool and people liked it. So we have the significant event, and then but hold on, we have to undo that and we have to reset that. So it can be death, but it doesn't always have to be death. But we have to pay attention that when characters change, that it's significant, and you resist the urge to go back.
Well, in tarot, when you draw the death card, it means change.
Mm-hmm.
It means significant change. It does not mean death. It means change. So I think James mentioned, okay, that's the exact quote I was looking for. There are a million metaphors for death. So yeah, something of, I guess on some level, it's the idea of severe consequences again, the death of a relationship, the death of innocence, the death of your ship. There is a bunch of things you could do that have major consequences. And if done right, to me, storytelling is about setting up those consequences. When I'm in chapter 1 or 2, I'm setting you up for the moment of consequence when something severe is going to happen. And maybe the readers don't like that, but they cared. And so they flip to the next chapter and they're going to go on with you on this.
Yeah. I mean, I think in for the purpose of this particular story, and let's go back to the whole Sabine stabbing situation, it would have been interesting if by getting stabbed, she was actually really hurt, and could not bounce right back. But she could heal, right? It was going to take time. And maybe the bad guys, sent like a siege to overtake, the place in order to, get something or get her. They wanted to finish the job or something where the objective changes to like, okay, now we have to save this person's life. Or now we have to protect her because now she's a target, or something where we actually like that character is not going to just be jumping up and down like nothing happened. Like she's hurt, she's in the bed. Like
what you're talking about.
Say that again.
It even could be mentally, like what you're talking about, the consequences. Maybe
she's in a coma or something.
Yeah, people. I'm sure people still would have complained, and who knows, I might have still been one of them if she's not physically, if she recovered physically. Yeah. But we could have had a major mental consequence that she's completely, or confidence has been shaken. She's no longer mentally the same person.
If you would have had her on the deathbed, more of a deathbed situation with Ahsoka at her side, and she's like, I really wanted to learn the ways of the Force. I really wanted that. And Ahsoka's like, I know. And then Sabine goes, and now it'll never happen because she doesn't think she's going to live. I would feel sorry. I'd be like, they weren't talking to each other. Now she's just coming out with it. I really did want this. I really wanted you to teach me and show me the ways of the Force. And I didn't know how to say it. And now I don't get a second chance. I've lost the opportunity. Yeah. That would make me feel a little sorry for her. And then if she does end up surviving, to your point, later, earning the healing, coming back to
Yes.
Then we're like, okay, she said it. It's out there. They know what Sabine knows what she wants. And now, a lot of characters after a near-death experience gain conviction towards something.
Could be that too.
How much more special would have that battle between Shin Hati been if she had actually had to really have a challenge to come back physically? It would have been very emotional. You're like, oh, this really matters to her.
Well, they're fighting again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which I didn't get, which in that episode I did not get it.
So if I'm writing dialogue for these two, and remember I said a lot of times dialogue is an extension of the combat. You're getting in their heads. Shin has great opportunity to get in this person's head. I fought you last time.
Yes.
We've done this before, sweetheart. This is gonna. So I mean, haunt her. Let her know. Be like, dude, I already stabbed you. You're lucky you survived. Like, this time I'll make sure I'll make sure you don't get up. Wouldn't if I got stabbed through by this person and they're taunting me this way, I'd be like, maybe they're right. Maybe I should be scared here.
Absolutely. Yeah. That you're so right. And then for me, I think I lost that desire to see consequences after the space bit. I think after that, I was like, oh, I know what I'm watching. This is just for fun. This is silly. None of this really is. There's no consequence for floating into space and like what what is that?
We can marry Poppins. We could do all sorts of things.
Yeah. Look, like I said, I loved it for the funny bits of it, but I can't take it serious anymore. I can't spend a lot of time caring about these characters or feeling like the tension's high on there. But that, like I said, that battle between Baylan and Ahsoka did do something to me. I was like, oh, finally, they're actually doing something. Like, finally.
I totally agree. I perked up when they started fighting, and I actually rewatched the lightsaber battle, and I was particularly admiring Ray Stevenson's performance, and I was like, this guy is carrying this show right now because he's so intimidating.
I completely agree with that.
Oh yeah, he's fabulous. I really enjoyed him. Every minute of him being on screen.
Oh, perfectly. I totally agree. He chews up the scenery. Like I said, your eyes. Like if the camera's on this person and he's in the background walking up, I'm like, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? Say something. Like this guy's. I just got like. Like Darth Vader has presence. When he walks, like in the opening of A New Hope, he just walks in and looks around and he doesn't say a word. We're all like, that guy's scary.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that clip on? It's made its way around social media. There's a guy playing Star Wars and he had a dog. And when Vader enters the room, the dog freaks out and runs behind his chair and is like peeking up behind the chair. When Vader walks in, it's so awesome. I was like, even this dog knows that Vader's dangerous, and it's a dog. But the dog literally was like watching and was like jumped off, ran around to the back, and was looking around. And Vader comes in and starts walking, and I'm like, oh man, that's archetypal. A dog understands the danger.
Yeah.
So, but Baylan has some of that gravitas when he's on screen. Did you guys notice too? I remember when the trailer for Ahsoka came out, they showed that scene of Baylan and his lightsaber looked orange, and I hated it. When I watched the show, he goes and it looks like a red lightsaber. They went back and they must have fixed that.
Really?
Yeah, they look like red lightsabers. Remember, there was all this talk about why their lightsabers are orange and stuff. They stopped talking. I don't think they were meant to be. I think that was just bad animation.
Or maybe like a filter that was put on it or something.
Or a filter, yeah. But they definitely cleaned it up because I was looking at it, I was like, those are red lightsabers now. There's none of that because what they did, it was like orange and it had like a light orange center. Whereas lightsabers, anyone who's ever tried to draw one, which I have, white in the middle and the color of it is only along the outline.
Oh, okay.
Just the outline is blue or red, and the rest of it's white. And that's how you get the color. When Balon did it in the trailer, it was like all orange. That's why I thought it always looked a little off, but it looks like they fixed it.
Yeah.
Am I the only one who thinks that?
No, it was orange in the.
Down the chat. We'll see.
Yeah,
Even the chat.
Yeah, even watching it to prepare for the show, I was like, that is absolutely a red lightsaber now. Like it's not ambiguous.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it looks so much better as a red lightsaber.
Yeah, it looks. Yeah, I like it red.
And another thing I appreciated about Balon, Sabine at some point starts shooting at him, and he's like blocking these lightsabers or the laser blasts. And I'm like, man, Balon's good at that. He looks good doing it.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
So are we ready to talk about what happens at the end of episode 4?
Yes.
Because because first of all, like I said, I did not understand that she was supposed to be dead because she fell off the edge, which does not seem like it would suddenly kill a Jedi.
Yeah,
and
fair
then
enough.
Here, and I don't know anything about where we are. So what is going on here?
So. And Retro, why don't you explain like how you took it? Because I'm curious.
Okay, well, so the way I took it was that I don't at this point she's not really dead. She's like in between dying and living, and so where she ends up is this place called the World Between Worlds, and
Doug,
that
you'll have to DM for us sometime.
and that place is like a place that you can be pulled into, and so someone pulled her into it, and we're supposed to assume, I suppose, that it was Anakin because that's who she sees, but that we're not sure, or a lot of people have been discussing whether that's really Anakin or not Anakin. Mm-hmm. The person has Anakin's memories, but he can also be a figure called the Father.
Yeah, we'll have to get into that in a second.
Yeah, it was one of the Mortis gods, and there's a few words that Anakin says that mirrors exactly what the Father said in the Clone Wars, I believe. That he said those exact words. So there may be, at first I thought, well, maybe it's the living force talking through Anakin, but it's leaning more towards possibly being the Father, or Anakin being in the form of the Father. Another theory that's out there is that this is Anakin, who is sort of like in a purgatory area because he is trying to make up for the harm he did in his past. So there's a lot of theories out there, and I love the theories. You can cook dinner on the on the theories.
Well, I am with Heath in that the way episode 4 ended wasn't exactly clear. I understand episode 4 better in the context of episode 5. So to be honest, I think we've been pretty clear that there's a pretty low bar for the sense of consequence. So I never felt that Ahsoka had died. But after seeing episode 5, I was like, okay, so she was supposed to have died falling off the cliff. That I get that now. But episode 4 ends, just to seal this off real quick, with Ray Stevenson, or Balon Skull, Shin Hatai, and Sabine all going up into the Eye of Sion, I think they call it. The super hyperdrive equipped ship, which has now set its coordinates, and they shoot off into this galaxy. Zoom! And this hyperspace jump is so powerful that it knocks all these ships, kind of like destroys some of the X-Wings and everything. Yeah. So as episode 4 ended, my sense, it was the first time that I got a sense that there was some world building occurring, where I was like, okay, so they're going to this other galaxy. They're gone. So it was I had enjoyed the lightsaber battle. Ahsoka lost. We didn't get a Mary Sue situation. And Sabine surrendered, which made me more endeared to her. And the bad guys seemed to be in charge at the end of episode 4, which I enjoyed. And then they jumped off into this other galaxy. And it was the first time that I sensed that they were gonna restructure something, that Star Wars could actually move forward in a new way. I was like, this could be new. This could reset Star Wars possibly very, very well. How they did it, what it all meant, I had really no clue at the end of episode 4. And I was slightly excited to see episode 5, more so than I had been in previous episodes. And then, of course, we jump in. Oh, and then it ends with Anakin Skywalker in that setting.
And I didn't understand who that was supposed to be.
Right. And of course, at the social media at the time,
he did not look like Anakin Skywalker to me. Maybe apparently to other people. Like, like if you, but I'm saying this, this is not a joke. Like, if I had not heard that he was coming back and you gave me that character, you said, who is that? You might be clued in by the costume, but I didn't know who that was.
Wow. Okay.
like he did to me, because then later, like, you look the same. I was like, that's what Anakin Skywalker is supposed to look like. I was questioning that.
Yeah, I think the initial image of Anakin,
Skywalker.
They did Mannequin Skywalker. Exactly. They went a little too far with the digital work. If you look at the side by side with Anakin and from the prequels, and you look at him in that one shot, his nose is a completely different person's nose.
Oh.
So yeah. It's not his nose at all.
I'm okay with that too. James coming in. I'm just saying that I got clued in. Like, first of all, I had heard that Anakin was coming back before I watched that. But before I watched it, and then there's his costume. You know, he's the Jedi who flaunts the dress code. We talked about that, so he's got a very distinctive look to his costume. But I'm not sure that looking at that guy, that's a different thing than storytelling or whatever. Like, he looked very artificial. He looked really artificial.
But I guess I'll say, I knew it was Anakin, but they have done some poor de-aging in general, you know, and it seems like no one's quite solved it yet. So it didn't bother me too much. I just didn't know where they were going to go with it. I was more like, okay, what are we going to do with Anakin?
Yeah.
You know, going forward.
Yeah. In episode 4, I think it was barely, he looked like Anakin, but there was some differences. But by episode 5, they let a little bit more of Hayden Christensen's face actually shine more in a lot of the scenes, so you could actually tell it was him. And so that made it a lot easier. But that initial visual of him is just so artificial, and they overcompensated, I think, for any like flaws or anything.
And I think the contrast there is drawn even stronger by the fact that they did a better job in episode 5. So after watching episode 5 and looking back at the end of episode 4, you're like, oh,
there you are.
The learning curve here.
I had a friend who messaged me after watching episode 4, and he said, I can't decide if I like Ahsoka after episode 4. Its writing is all over the place. It has brief moments of clarity and otherwise endless soup of boring. Let's just put it this way. The stinger ending of episode 4 makes it clear one of two things is about to happen. This is before 5 was released. One of two things is going to happen. The show immediately falls apart in episode 5, or it does something ill-advised but interesting.
Well, I think there's a wider range on the spectrum than just those two, but those two are on that spectrum.
Yeah.
And I can't argue with them. Like I agree with most of the criticism. There's a lot of the show I won't defend and will be openly judge. Like, I will judge it poorly because they have not done a good job. Episode 4 gained strength for me for all the reasons we've discussed tonight so far. Balon Skull, better lightsaber battles, an ending that, at least to me, suggested significant change for Star Wars. And I have never felt that before. And I also felt that there was an attempt to build up to something. And I did not get that with the uneven storytelling before this. And then, of course, episode 5 happened. And my opinion,
but I've been trying to get an answer. A question on this. So but what you show up in is something called the World Between Worlds. That apparently you know if you've been watching Rebels.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. That if you're not watching that, you don't know where you are.
Correct.
And what's going on. So
Correct.
What is this? What am I looking at? Who has watched Rebels and knows what this is that we're looking at?
It's like like a purgatory place. It's like nowhere. It's like when it's not quite heaven. It's not earth. It's just a plane in which nothing there isn't anything there, but you can go to other points in time if you want to.
The past exists. There's some hint of the future there.
Yeah, it's an imaginary plane, but it really exists in Star Wars.
It's kind of it's like an interdimensional space.
Yes, that's the best way to describe it.
I'm sorry, what was it, Doug? Say that again.
It's kind of like an interdimensional space where future, past, and present coexist, where you can observe, hear, re-experience events that have happened in the past. It is a place that Force users can and attempt to get into. There's also the Rebels ended with the Emperor attempting to brute force his way into the World Between Worlds and failed, which was significant. It was actually an interesting thread. Ahsoka was fighting Darth Vader at one point and was about to be killed in Rebels by Darth Vader in Darth Vader gear. And Ezra Bridger pulls her out of that battle into the World Between Worlds. And they have a very significant discussion there. Almost like there's a certain existential quality to the World Between Worlds. I mean, how else would you describe it, Retro? I mean, it's just kind of...
I would call it a purgatory, time-dimensional place. And it acted a little bit weird this time. It didn't act like it did in previous episodes. Portals. Yeah, there were no portals to go in anywhere in time, but he did kind of take her along like these, little pockets of memory that she had. And we likened it to kind of, A Christmas Carol, where you have the ghost of Christmas Carol take you on different spots in time. So that's kind of that I kind of like that part.
I do too.
Or like bouncing around in different times, but that place is just a plane that is not it's not visible to anyone except for like Force users that are like Ahsoka. I think she's the only one, and Ezra was there.
Ezra and Anakin.
Anakin was there, yeah.
So there's not a lot of context for people coming into the show without the animated series. It's also called a Force plane. Yeah, I like that word that Retro used, plane. We consider collective memory, the will of Force. But you can affect the outcome of events. That's a key thing. And to be perfectly honest, might as well address this now. 2 years ago, a rumor came out that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were going to erase the sequel trilogy in the Ahsoka show using the World Between Worlds. And this was ridiculed.
Oh.
It was ridiculed 2 years ago, and rightfully so. The idea of Disney erasing the sequel trilogy is hard for even me to believe that they have created this and then will acquit. So I was like, it's not true. But here we are with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau in the Ahsoka show, in the World Between Worlds, and it's like all of it's there except the actual erasure of the sequel trilogy, which I still don't think they're going to erase it. I have a theory that they are going to create an alternate course of events in which the sequel trilogy will exist, and where this new reality has opened up, or we don't know where it's headed, but it is coexisting. That's what I think they're going to do. I hope I'm right, and I'll make my case in a little bit that part of what I saw in episode 5 strongly suggests brilliant awareness of storytelling in Star Wars with the exact sensibility and focus on exactly what they need to if they're going to do just that. I could be wrong. Like, I could watch episode 6 and be like, oh, never mind. Like, they ruined it. This meant nothing. But there's evidence that they're trying to do something awesome with this show. I'll just say that. And like Retro, I loved a lot of the sequences in this World Between Worlds with the different memories. Quick shout out to Ariana Greenblatt.
Yes.
Young Ahsoka. When they first cast it, they first cast the young Ahsoka, I was like, what? Is that Rosario Dawson? I was like, who's this? Who's this like girl? And then as she was going on, I was like, I like her. I didn't know it was Ariana Greenblatt.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I don't know who this is, but she's like nailing this young Ahsoka role. Yeah. She played young Gamora in the Avengers. She played Sasha in the Barbie movie that came out. And now she's Ahsoka Tano. And I was like,
oh, she was in the Barbie movie. Oh,
she was the daughter who had who at first I hated her. I didn't like her character.
Oh, she's so
but she ended up, she was brutal. But she ended up having an arc, and I ended up liking her character. And she actually carried a lot of poignancy. And I thought she carried a certain gravitas of a mother-daughter, a wounded relationship that was healing. I thought she really got that in Barbie.
Yeah.
And I loved her as Ahsoka Tano. I was like,
oh, she was great.
Her.
Oh, yeah, she was great. Her fight scenes were great too.
Dude, there's this parts. Go ahead, say it.
Yeah, she was fantastic. And physically, I was like, wow, can we continue the show with this girl?
There's a scene where Anakin is like, come on. And it's the first time we really saw this, right? We never really saw Clone Wars Anakin in live action. And here's young Ahsoka Tano. And then he starts running. We've seen it in the Clone Wars animated show where he's running and he's blocking laser beams. And she was running behind him. And she's like reacting to explosions. And she's like blocking. I was like, look at that. She's like crushing this. Like, she's physical, fast, athletic. I thought she was a great Ahsoka Tano and very convincing that she was there blocking these laser bolts rushing into a battle. And, I don't think I would have thought I would believe a scene like that, but she nailed it.
Well, one thing I really enjoyed about her performance is the emotional part that she was able to convey. Like, being able to we finally, after 5 episodes, we're finally getting into Ahsoka's thoughts finally, which is I'm very upset at, but I'm also like, I'm okay. At least she's doing it, right? She's doing it. So she was fantastic at doing that while also reacting to her environment. Now seeing how she's reacting to all of the death around her in the battles, and just seeing, okay, well, so this is still in her mind. This is still fresh in her mind. She doesn't want to be part of a war, but and unfortunately, we're in Star Wars, right? She has to be a part of this war. So I think it was great to see her deal with that in some way, shape, or form. And I hope they do mention this a little bit. I mean, it feels like she is kind of over it by the end of the episode, but and it's a shame that Rosario didn't get a chance to act this part, but at least we got something of a backstory,
Well, I totally agree. There is a scene, and this is why I think something is shifting in Ahsoka, away from bad storytelling and potentially into great storytelling. Potentially, there was a scene where, and we could go back and kind of walk through this, but there is a second set where That is
Oh my
God.
Unfortunately, we're watching Star Wars. So
She has to be part of the war. That is great. But so the first segment is her fighting Anakin in the World Between Worlds, where it's Rosario Dawson, and they have a little bit of banter, and the banter is okay. But he lights his lightsaber, and they start to have a lightsaber battle. And he frames this as training. He's like, I'm going to complete your training, and that sounds like Star Wars to me.
Yeah.
And she goes, okay. She calls him master. You know, that she is again assuming the role of Padawan. And he lights his lightsaber, and he frames this lesson as, do you want to live or do you want to die? And I think this is excellent. He's referring to her physically. She fell off the cliff. Now we know in episode 4, she was meant to die if she fell. Like that, she was going to hit the water, and that would be it for Ahsoka. So he's saying, I pulled you out of that final moment, but it's going to be in your hands. Are you going to survive this fall or not? And the answer to whether she survives the fall seems to be whether or not she's going to find the will to fight and live. And that is part of Anakin's lesson here. So, and he comes at her, and again, I thought it was great, fast lightsaber action. I mean, he's coming at her pretty hard, and she's like blocking, and there's sparks again off the lightsabers, and it looks good. I hit pause a couple times, and I was like, that looks good. Like, that looks cool. And with that background in the World Between Worlds, where they're on that like star bridge, and he's coming at her with the blue lightsaber as Anakin from Revenge of the Sith, and her with her double elegant white lightsabers. I was like, it just looks good. You know, I thought it looked good, and it felt like a lightsaber battle. And she gets one on him. Like she force punches him or something. Did you guys catch exactly what she did?
She kicks him, I think. Well, no. Did she? Yeah, I think she kicks him in the face.
Okay, she lands a blow basically, and what I appreciated is she's like, looks like you don't have much to teach me, and Anakin smirks.
I love that part. Yeah,
it reminded me a lot of Anakin from the prequels, where he had that kind of boyish, you know, I'm kind of messing around with the dark side, you know, like almost that smirky getting away with something look that I didn't like in the prequels at the time, back then at the time, but has grown on me. And seeing him do it again, I was like, oh, there is that. Like, this is Anakin. Like I felt like I was watching Anakin Skywalker. And of course he goes, I still have things to teach you. And he like knocks the ground out.
Yes.
And that's when she finds herself falling into a dreamscape. Is the best way I could describe it.
Yes, that's what I would call it. A
dream. I would call it that too. Can I go back just 1 second?
Yeah.
Before we go to that, when Doug was talking about the World Between Worlds and what it is, and I didn't know what it was, but I had heard this rumor as well 2 years ago that maybe they're setting this up for some erasure of the sequel trilogy using something that was introduced. The World Between Worlds had been introduced was it Rebels that it was introduced?
Rebels.
Well, okay, there may be some way to go.
Potentially also in the Clone Wars with the Mortis plot.
Okay. But so, you know, a lot of people want to see that. Other people don't. But I mean, there's also, it's like, hey, we could completely redo this. Here's some kind of methods. Okay, so that's cool. So I get that. If you're on board with that, that would be cool. But here, from a storytelling perspective, ignoring whether or not you want that to happen or not, I'm just talking about from a storytelling perspective. When you're talking about the World Between Worlds and what it is and the ability to move through time and stuff, to me, it sounds like a new way to introduce a way for there to be no consequences again. This seems, it seems to be deliberately interesting. Like if you're going to do erasing the sequel trilogy, then you're deliberately introducing it as a way to come up with no consequences, that we can muck things up and change things. But on the other hand, I'm skeptical. Sometimes time travel stories can be done well. Sometimes it's very rare. Sometimes I wouldn't want to introduce it, but in limited circumstances, like Terminator, you can do it. Terminator 1 and 2, you know, you can do it. And perhaps Back to the Future, because that's lighthearted. And kind of stuff. So it can be done in limited circumstances.
Star Trek
on the whole, I'm against things like time travel because of what we were talking about. Here is a great way for us to come up with a great way to come up with no consequences for actions.
That's the multiverse problem that Marvel has.
And Star Trek, because we're still in this stupid timeline of Star Trek that I don't like. Why are we back in the past of Star Trek when we should have been in the future of Star Trek?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and funny enough, Heath and I took a deep dive in Star Trek for The Voyage Home. And one of the things that we said was that, thank God Star Trek never went back and addressed time travel again. It's like Kirk goes back in time and it's like, we don't talk about that.
It works. Okay, so that's another movie where that particular movie is also one that works on a standalone basis. That one works
because they didn't allow it to get in to invade the franchise. At the Retro's point, when they do let it come in,
2009.
You start losing your audience on some level because, like she's saying, the consequences. Well, we'll just go back to the world between worlds and do it again. So,
well, some fans believe that Ahsoka herself is immortal. She can't die. They won't let her die because there are so many times when she should have died, and they just keep on saving her.
Well, do you know, I have a solution.
James is backing up Retro Nerd Girl. Retro Nerd Girl, yes, we've been waiting for a chronologically appropriate Star Trek for now over a decade. Oh, and Stray is backing me up. Stray says, I agree with Heath. The safety net plot armor is lame.
Yeah, so I have a solution to this from a writing perspective.
Okay.
If you're going to do it, close it off. So have an episode or something where you destroy the world between worlds after this. It can never, and have them say, once you do this, you are on this line and for forever. You are accepting your consequences in your world forever. And close it off. Have them be like, that's what we want.
Yeah, or this is the last time we can bring you here, like, you know, and I just like get out and live and die.
Yeah, Puss in Boots. The second he was down to his last life in The Last Wish, now it matters. So there's always something human about that, where the fantastic world where you can get 9 lives is over. You're on your last one, and now he's like us. Now he has to deal with this. The fact that you screw up once, that's it. You make one dumb decision and that's it. We like that. And Puss in Boots, The Last Wish really resonated with audiences. It seemed like a spinoff of a spinoff on its 3rd sequel. It shouldn't have been successful at all. It was a total hit. And I think because it hit that theme. So I think you can take that theme. Basically, this is the world between worlds. We've used this to reset galaxies before, but this would be the last time. And now your galaxy is on a quest. If you destroy yourselves, there's no going back. And then have the characters choose that. We want that, you know. And I think audiences would accept that. You get one get out of jail free card here on your plot armor.
Yeah, I would say, okay, they could do that. I'm with you, Doug. But I would also say that this is a weird place to do it in this TV show that I don't know how many people are watching. And I like people like me, even though I'm a Star Wars fan, I don't understand because I didn't watch all of Rebels. You could have done something cool with that. I'm convinced. This is a cliche thing to say that there was a story here. Like you're talking about starting with Thrawn. So much that Doug, watch our other discussion on Ahsoka when Doug said how this should have started. You could have captivated us, and then if you're going to do something really crazy like do a erasure of the sequel trilogy, you got to tell us at least where they're standing. You know, and go ahead and include that in this show, and then people could have been riveted. And then I think what you're saying is right. If you're going to do something that it needs to be their decision, it needs to be clear. This is not something where anytime anybody dies, we can come back to the world between worlds and pull somebody out or something like that. Like I was really hoping that they don't bring Anakin back to the future. Like I'm really hoping that Anakin doesn't walk. Like that seems really, really dumb. I don't want to that seems so. I don't want to push anything past anybody. But on the other hand, that seems so dumb. That might have been what my friend was talking about, that like Anakin Skywalker could walk out in, you know, post Return of the Jedi. I don't know if that's even.
Oh my God. You get your damn hands off Anakin. Luke is helping Anakin like hook up with Padme.
Sable says Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is utterly fantastic. Easily the best animated film since the first Spider-Verse, and a fantastic film.
There you go.
Wow.
So because it's taking away that plot armor for this character, and you see how it affects them, and it brings that character down to our level because we deal with it. You know, we you know, you jump off the edge of a boat to make your friends laugh, and you jump into shark infested water. That simple, stupid mistake, and you're gone. You know? which happened.
I don't know understand all the Force in there. I don't know Stray personally. You guys might.
Yeah, I'm not sure of all the physics of it. It's obviously a completely physicsless world on some level, but I guess my point is, like, if you're going to introduce these things, you have to have a way of closing them off, because you run into the problems where, if Scotty dies in Star Trek 6, why don't we just loop around the sun and get him back? Like, you really do lose your audience that way, in my opinion.
And
James,
right,
I think it's 3 episodes. I think there are 3 episodes.
3 left.
Yeah, 3 left.
So,
yeah, the lack of consequences in this is just really what's really taking it down, the level of excitement, and also the sheer fact that there are so many plot devices that are like deus ex machinas, like the space whales, and these things are going to come save you, and like why isn't anybody doing anything creative and clever? Now, I know we're talking about a totally different franchise here, but like a Sherlock Holmes or like Indiana Jones, they figured out things. Like, they got into trouble, but they figured their way out of their situations. James Bond, another one. Why are we, every single episode we have to depend on magic or some kind of like magical whales to come save us from something, you know what I mean? Or
and she's actually talking literally here, people. You would think that would be a figure. They've got to pick.
Retro, have you never been saved by a magical whale?
No, actually, she's actually talking about magic whales.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, when my dad got frustrated with that, I had to kind of surrender, because I was like, I can't defend magic whales, that travel in hyperspace. The only thing I could say is, if the storytelling that follows is supreme, and I mean excellent, then people will be more forgiving of it. But man, it has to be supreme. It has to be phenomenal storytelling for us to forgive some of these bizarre.
Yeah, it's just so many, and even right out the gate with the magical temple, ancient temple that has links to modern day. It's like. It's kind of like, okay, we're just gonna go with it for now. But yeah, it kind of takes the wind out of when they do something great. Like we got to see Anakin for a little bit and do his thing, and I was like, wow, I was really enjoying Hayden Christensen's incredible performance. He was really great. But the context of what was happening there was sort of like, okay, this is happening because of something that Ahsoka needed to do psychologically, and that's the only way we're gonna get Anakin, really. So
I do have another layer to add as we go, and again, I could be wrong, and in fact, I'll preface this: when I saw The Force Awakens, at first, I didn't like it, and then I thought I understood something about it, and I changed my mind, and I decided I did like The Force Awakens until everything that came after went out the window. When she beat Kylo Ren in that lightsaber fight, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, she wins? Like, that's supposed to be the last battle. The villain is the one that always wins. It's the hero that can't win and finally does in the end. But there was a scene where when she was fighting him, they cross lightsabers and it plays Luke Skywalker's theme. And she closes her eyes and it plays Luke Skywalker's theme. And my dad pointed out, he goes, that's Luke's theme. And I was like, oh, she's remembering her training. I was like, oh, she didn't beat him for the first time. Like, she was trained. She was a Jedi. She's remembering who she is. But that's not what they did. That's not at all what happened. So I want to preface this, that what this episode might mean could be thrown out the window in episode 6.
That's the problem. Yes.
Right.
That is the key, is like everything, all the theories, all the ideas, all the things that are linking up to something maybe cool is just like, nope, that's not what it was about at all. I just would, we have to see. I mean, there's nothing left but that. But the curiosity about this other world is really what's got it's pretty much the only thing that's keeping me like really interested, and more scenes with Balin to find out what's his story. Like, okay, I'm curious about that. I mean, I did enjoy this episode for the member berries. It was great, and I did enjoy it for the deeper context of learning about Ahsoka's mental state. I like that.
Well, I'm just going to say this. You might be right. Totally. In 100% right that these were mainly member berries. I hope I'm right that there was more here, because if they just treat them as member berries, then they might have squandered the final little opening where we could squeeze through and get it into Star Wars again.
This was supposed to be it.
My God. So
we keep being told that, though.
But here's the thing, though. Like, they've really damaged this brand so much that Ahsoka was something new. We haven't really seen her live action. So I think some people were willing to give her a chance. Mm-hmm. She's not a Kathleen Kennedy heroine. She really came before all that. She does suffer. She did fail. Like, there's so much about Ahsoka Tano that I like. In fact, love. I think she's a great character. I have her figurine next to Rex up there. So anyway, so there's the chance that this is all member berries. I believe that there might be more, and I'll say why. But the first time that she falls into the dreamscape, out of the world between worlds, apparently, and into this setting, she lands, and here's where we meet Ariana Greenblatt's version of Ahsoka Tano, young, I think 13 or 14-year-old Ahsoka Tano. Mm-hmm. So young.
Everybody seems to just be going crazy about it. Seems like
yes,
wonderful.
Which is rare. It's rare that everyone is so positive. So she says, she's like, we're in the Clone Wars. And so right away, just to be upfront, I've watched this episode multiple times already, specifically the Anakin Ahsoka parts, multiple times. And she's standing there, and suddenly these clone troopers start coming out, poof, poof, like out of the mist behind her, and start running past her. And I'm very sensitive to archetypal designs and archetypal elements in stories. And to me, this was perfect example of liminal space. We don't see where the clones come from. We don't see where they're headed. They have no beginning. They have no end.
I think that's a fantastic point, Doug. I think it's a fantastic point.
And I think that's the only reason
is fantastic.
It's the only reason this low budget scene works.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just run past her in the present moment towards some unseen front line.
You said unknown where they're coming from.
Unknown.
We don't think about this, and it would be worse if you saw where they were coming from or where they're going to.
Right.
You're completely right about it. Dreamscape, troopers coming out from an unknown behind out of the mist and then charging into an unknown forward. That's so important. And Doug thought that it's incredible to this scene. It absolutely is.
Yeah. Visually too. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, and it's exaggerated, but it's almost to me like a fantasia of war. You see the silhouettes of those walkers kind of moving through the background. You hear the sounds and the silhouettes of the gunships passing by. You see the lasers, zipping by in certain ropes of light. And then you see the lightsaber, and Anakin walks into the scene, and he gives the most basic war command, forward. Just this generic command of war. We're moving forward through this liminal space. And he turns and he's like, come on, Snips, let's go. And she's like, this is the Clone Wars. He's like, no kidding, let's go. And this is where we get to see Ariana Greenblatt's physicality in her acting that Retro was talking about. She's very good. She's very fast with her sword, very convincingly swatting away lasers. She reacts to explosions. She's very physical in this. And when she's running, she doesn't look like she's a girl running on a sound stage. She's running, like she's sprinting through these things and running through, and she just runs into the mist, into the nothingness that's laying ahead and disappears. So it's very dreamlike in that. And when she returns, we have another reset fantasia of war. There's all these clone troopers. They're down. They're in gurneys. There's parked walkers and gunships just laying stationary. And this is why I think we might be shifting into good storytelling, because you don't see this in Disney Star Wars ever without a single word of dialogue. I can't compliment this scene enough. Without a single word of dialogue, she looks at the clone trooper. He's so wounded, his face is covered up. And she sits next to him and she grabs his hand, and the clone trooper reaches over and grabs hers too.
Grabs hers. Yes.
It's such a poignant scene. She doesn't even say anything. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, that's poignant.
Yeah.
She cares about these guys.
Yeah.
You know, these are clones. They're all the same. But the fact that he needed that, you know, he's laying there in this, he needed it. He wanted, when she tried to comfort him, he accepts that comfort that she's getting. And you could see she drops her head and she's kind of emotional about it. You know, she's in that moment weighing out the cost of war is how I took this. Like, this is too high of a cost, is what she seems to be feeling.
And she feels responsible for it because she says they were just following my orders. And there's a lot of guilt on her part for all these years. That she's had that in her mind, that she led these people to die. And so, it can be very, you know, like having memories like that, it would be horrible, like to have. So I felt a big, huge load of sympathy for her at that point, because it's like, oh my God, this has been, you know, this is her the weight on her shoulders. And they should have played into this more all through I mean, it's just a shame we're getting this at episode 5.
Well, it's even more bizarre when I introduce what I think could be happening, that it would be this late. I mean like 7 years too late. But so we have this poignant moment, and then Anakin comes over, and this moment is followed up on by the writer. She doesn't just have this moment, we move on. They have dialogue. Like, she follows up. She's like, you know, like you just said, Retro, it's my fault. They were following my orders. The cost of this is too high. And Anakin we get a good look at Clone Wars Anakin, and he looks good. Like, he had the short hair, and the Vader thing over his chest that I always thought was cool. And we see him the way he's portrayed in the Clone Wars, which is as heroic and compassionate. He's really good in the Clone Wars. In the movies, he was a little bit more emote.
Yeah.
So here he's giving her, he's like, well, you know, you have to fight. Emo. Yeah, very emo. Yeah, he's very emo, and kind of a little too young in some cases. But he tells her, he's like, she's like, doesn't it bother you that so many have died? And Anakin is like, of course. Like, he's like, yeah, it really does bother me. He's like, but this is a war. And he tells her, he goes, I am trying to teach you to be a leader and a warrior. Mm-hmm. And she says, and I love her follow-up question, is this what I was supposed to be trained for as a Jedi? She's asking, I think, the most fundamental question of the entire failure of the Jedi Order.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, they were destroyed by this. So she's asking the fundamental question. The question, is this what I'm trained for? To be a soldier? And Anakin gives the logic of the era answer. We have to adapt to the times. You know, as a Jedi, we have to adapt to the times, and I'm going to teach you to be a leader. So he's giving her the best possible reason why the Jedi would shift their focus to war fighting. And he acknowledges, you know, when I was a Padawan, Obi-Wan taught me to be a keeper of the peace. But now there's this war. We have to lead this war, and we're the best, you know, suited to do it. And this really bothers her. And then there's the scene that everyone's talking about. And this scene rocks. I love this scene. The music is awesome. He lights his lightsaber, and he's like, we have to go. Once more unto thy breach, dear friend. And again, this is liminal space. He lights his lightsaber, and he gathers up the clones around him, and he walks off. And the music is great. And this is why I think this scene is so important. When we saw the events of Star Wars, we watched it through elites. We're watching it through the leadership of the Jedi Order, the elite of the elite, and how they failed. We're watching it through the eyes of an innocent in Ahsoka Tano. She's a young girl. She's clearly disturbed by the events. She's not comfortable with this. And Anakin's like, we go on anyway. The show must go on. And he marches off, and he has his lightsaber off to his side. You see the clones start running past Ahsoka again, and she's watching him, and it's like he's marching off to his fate.
Yes.
The clones, the walkers, the gunships, they all go into an abyss down there, out there, wherever he's headed. And in the explosions of the battle, he turns to Darth Vader for a second with the red lightsaber. And we get to see her reaction. She's horrified.
I loved it. I love it.
Totally.
That was wonderful. Yeah. And it's also, too, just saying how her own fear of possibly going down that route. You know, like if she keeps on going, she could end up like Vader, you know, and I just love that flashing, like, okay, you know, it was just so beautifully done. I definitely love that. Like, this is why I say that, you know, Filoni has really like brilliant ideas. Like, that's brilliant. That was brilliant. That all that creative work there, visually and storytelling wise, really, really great stuff.
Well, because she looks scared watching this, because to me, I'm like, what is she scared of? She knows the outcome. I think the question in her mind in that moment is, how could we have stopped this? What could have stopped this? This is the most heroic man of my generation, and he turned to the dark side. The Jedi Order, this wasn't like society made a wrong turn. The Jedi Order failed. All the democratic institutions failed. All of society failed. It all failed at such a high level. This wasn't this was a catastrophe.
Oh, yeah.
So how do we stop this? And I think that's important, because him marching off to the horizon suggests that he is marching toward his fate from a symbolic standpoint. So that's another central question. So the first question is, are the Jedi meant for war and soldiery? And two, what could we have done to stop it? Could this have been stopped, this course of events, which was so disastrous for the whole galaxy? I thought that was pretty moving and important. I've heard people who are trying to make fun of the show say, it's just him and sand. I'm like, no, it's not. There's something archetypally profound in the imagery, and the filmmakers knew it. The composer knew it. Ariana Greenblatt knew it. All the people involved in this sensed the gravity of the scene. So I do think that it was more than just a lucky stroke by the filmmakers.
Yeah, I did cry during this. Sorry, I'm such a wimp. I did. I cried.
I got emotional.
Like, it's Anakin. Oh God.
Yes, because he's so heroic. It is such a loss that he turned to Darth Vader.
See, but this was exactly what I wanted from the prequel movies. I wanted them to break my heart. I wanted them to show him like this in the prequel movies.
That would have been better.
Yeah.
I'm very critical of the prequel movies.
Me too.
I'm very critical of them. And I think you're completely right, Retro Nerd Girl. That kind of thing is what the prequels should have delivered. If they're going to do the fall, they're trying to tell the story of the fall of Anakin Skywalker. That's the kind of thing they should have delivered.
Yeah.
That's what they should have delivered.
Correct.
Like, make him charming and amazing, and then break your heart. I mean, because I was like, oh gosh, you know, and unfortunately I think they dropped the ball on that, but this will be enough for me. I think I was like, okay, there's my moment. I got my prequel Anakin there. But
there may be more. There may be more because of what I think that
I think so too. I think so too.
So this awesome moment, and by the way, I've rewatched this multiple times.
Oh yeah.
Just instant Star Wars pleasure because of the archetypal significance of it. And to make this scene even more powerful to me, it's not just that it flickers and we see him as Darth Vader marching toward the horizon. he comes back as Anakin.
Yeah.
And so we watch him get smaller and smaller. And if you notice, all the clone troopers are missing. It starts with him and a bunch of clones running toward the horizon. The clones are largely dissolved by the time he turns into Vader. So when he comes back to Anakin, he is marching to his fate alone with that lightsaber. He's all by himself out there in no man's land. So in war terms, you don't want to be by yourself out there. And Anakin's alone. So I think there was something about him suddenly being alone as this lone hero, unsupported by his battalions.
And Ahsoka wasn't there. Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't follow him.
Yeah, yeah. And the next scene, she's like, I don't know this particular, where is this, and I don't remember this. And she says, oh, this was, after we separated, the Mandalore, the siege of Mandalore. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, how that ties in together, like at this point, they're totally separate and going through their own stuff, and she is not there to help him.
That's right. She is by herself. And at this point in the story, if you've watched the Clone Wars, she's not a Jedi anymore in the Siege of Mandalore. Yeah. If you're going to go to war in the Clone Wars, make sure you have a battle buddy.
James says the Clone Wars delivered on that premise. What we were talking about there. But that should have been, I mean, okay, maybe so. But I mean, that should have been the movies.
That should have been the movies, yeah.
The Clone Wars understood it and got it right. The movies rushed into it. I almost think that the movie should have started with episode 3 and expanded on the Clone Wars the way they did. But, whatever. So real quick, again, Ariana Greenblatt in the Siege of Mandalore, they cut and she's like kicking some serious
she's
ass.
Amazing. Oh my God.
I mean,
she was fantastic. Yeah, I really loved what she did. It was just for a few moments, but she did a lot of the physical. You could see where she's, I'm sure she had a stunt double to help her out, but where you can actually see her face doing the moves. I was like, good job.
Right on. Yeah. Well, they have that. She was, I love actors or actresses that can pull off the physicality that the scenes require. And she delivered in every scene that was asked of her in these very demanding scenes. And then here's where, and there's a cool shot of her and Anakin kind of side by side.
I love it. Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of the Clone Wars. And she talks about, this is important, and Heath, this will tie into some of the Heroine's Labyrinth because it's direct dialogue. Anakin says, I think I wrote it down even. He goes, Ahsoka, within you will be everything that I am. All the knowledge that I possess, just as I inherited from my master and he from his. You're part of a legacy. This dialogue is sacred, the sacred fire. Heroines are often pressured in a way to follow through on the demands of the native culture.
Oh.
And they resist this. Heroines do not like this because it forces them into a narrow interpretation of what's expected of them. And heroines have their own sacred fire. And in a lot of stories, the heroine claims her sacred fire while the native culture also claims her sacred fire as well. So when Anakin says to her, because remember in the Heroine's Labyrinth, the issue with the native culture and the heroine's sacred fire is continuity. She's expected to pass something on, whether it's family tradition, kids, I mean, literally physically kids, tradition, a legacy, something she is expected to carry on. And this narrows her choices. And this is why heroines resist the call of the native culture. This dialogue goes right into that. You are part of this legacy. And she's like, but my legacy, and she says exactly what Baylan Skoll said. My legacy was death and destruction. I don't want to be a part of that legacy. And then Anakin says, and Retro can get into this in a second too, but you're more than that, Ahsoka, just as I am more than that. And when she suggests that, yeah, you're more than that, you're more dangerous than we all thought, he gets pissed. at her.
Yeah. He's like, is that what this is about? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Juicy dialogue.
Yeah. And I love how they turn him into Darth Vader, because that's what he is. He has a red lightsaber. He's not Anakin. He looks like Anakin, but he's dressed. And he goes, I told you, are you going to live or die? And she goes, she's resistant. She's like, no, I'm not going to answer the question. And if you watch the episode, all the music stops. She goes, no. Silent. And he goes, incorrect. He likes his lightsaber, and he comes at her pretty hard, right?
Yeah. And just mind you, she's like a 13-year-old girl.
Yes.
She's very, very, very little. And so I was like, wow, this is pretty intense. And during the battle, he kicks her in the chest. He gives her a Spartan 300 kick in the chest.
This is Spartan.
I was like, wow.
That's awesome. Yeah. He just totally dominates her. Well, she holds her own for a little bit. But this is Vader at the height of his powers, and he makes short work of her and basically boots her right back into the world between worlds.
Wow.
Where they have another very cool fight. In fact, I've seen, you can't help but think it when you watch it, but I've seen on social media the memes of him and Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith, the famous lightsaber clash scene where the lava shoots up. They juxtapose that with him and Ahsoka having a similar, pretty cool.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we've seen Hayden Christensen Anakin really with that red lightsaber. He didn't have that in Revenge of the Sith. So anyway, she bests him. And I've heard people complain about that, but this is a lesson. He's not trying to kill her. No. He wants her to fight for her life, basically. Like, show that you want this. You want to live. Prove it. Beat me. And she has, I think, a pretty cool moment when she says, I choose to live. And she kind of emphasizes it. So, lesson over. He looks at her, and she has that lightsaber right up against his throat. She even leans in, and her eyes turn yellow.
Right, yeah.
And then she backs off. And I thought Hayden Christensen nailed the moment where he's looking at her like, what are you going to do? With the red lightsaber right here. And he's like, what are you going to do? And then when she chooses life, you could see him almost close his eyes and reset. Then he's like, there's hope for you still. So he goes back to redeemed Anakin there. So that shows me, he's capable of both in this. And we have a mentor figure for the first time that has mastered the good side and the dark side. And he gave her a good side lesson and a dark side lesson, which you
Well, talk more about that, Doug, because you had talked about the need for someone to master both. And so you think that's what's happening here?
Well, I didn't say there was a need for it, but we've never seen it. All the Jedi Masters could only teach the good side of the Force and warn against the dark side. It's a seductive path. Don't have attachments. And it's like,
yes,
that's a tall order.
Yeah.
And then even the dark side, Emperor Palpatine, all he can do is teach the dark side, and all the ridiculous dogma of the Jedi, whatever. Here's a guy who has mastered both sides.
Yeah.
And is teaching lessons from the dark side and the light side. And they're both relevant. From the good side, wanting to live or die is a matter of survival so that you don't get destroyed by evil and destruction. And from the dark side, it's because you're greedy for life. You must want to live. And she gets both lessons and chooses life in the end.
Yeah.
And that's
when she even dips into the dark side just for a moment. Just for a moment. And then so she overcomes her hatred and chooses, like she says, she wants to live, but she also doesn't cut off his, she doesn't make that final move, right?
But that's important because Yoda's not going to teach that lesson. It's only the dark side guys that try to bait you into turning, unleash your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me. Like, that's the dark side trying to bait you into that. And he's doing that to her, and she takes the bait for the smallest second, which I don't mind because we all have the dark side. That's the idea, is that it's in us. We have to learn to control it, not to give into it, right. Everyone has a dark side.
Yeah. I just hope that with all the stuff that we're finding that's really poignant about this, that they don't just throw it away with
God.
something stupid. You know what I mean? I really like
I'm right there with you. It's like we're all locking arms and we're like,
yeah, like
come on,
yes.
let's
And
I
then
see where that
there's
happens a lot.
yeah, that's why it's so hard for anybody to actually like say that they like it. I mean, I've seen people who are like, I don't know if we should actually admit that I like this because it's
Yes.
like,
Yes,
don't want
you're
to
totally
get
right.
let down.
I've had people tease me about getting excited about this, and I don't even argue because everyone might be laughing at me next week if if episode 6 throws it all out the window that I got this passionate about it. But there's a chance that this is trending in the right direction, and I'll say, here's what I'll say. And this is only true of Star Wars because of the way of all the prequels and the original trilogy. The prequels told the story of the fall of the Republic, the collapse of the Jedi Order, the rise of the Sith, and the rise of the Empire. It was catastrophic. Episode 3 ends with the bad guys completely winning. Clean sweep, total victory for the bad guys. That's how you end the first trilogy. The original trilogy is about good versus evil, and the insurgent good rises up to strike the Empire and brings it all down. Great. So you're going to have a new Republic. So you're going to have a new Jedi Order. What do we do differently? You cannot have another film or trilogy. You cannot move forward with Star Wars after Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, unless you go back to answer the central question of the prequels. What went wrong? How do we stop it from happening? And what are the policy? What do we do differently this time? What do we let attachments into the Jedi Order? You know, maybe do we study the dark side so that we're not blind to it when it grows under our nose? From the Republic, do we put Jedi in with the military? Do we do military interventions in the systems like this? You have to start asking those questions. The sequel trilogy didn't even think about those questions.
Oh, no.
They never said we have to solve the prequels. We have to learn from what the doom of the prequels. This episode convinced me, at least for now, that they're returning to those central questions in this episode of what went wrong and what should we have done. And we're doing it through Ahsoka Tano, who was there in the prequels, who knows Anakin, like Luke. Luke knows him. She knows him better than Luke, actually. She is the eyes of the innocent that this franchise is desperately needed. She's a heroic woman that we can all get behind. And she's tied to the main legacy characters. And she seems to be asking the important questions. What should we have done differently? And she's asking them. This is why I think this is important. She's asking them in the episode that was rumored to shift away from the sequel trilogy. Meaning, if you're going to shift away from the sequel trilogy, you then have to go back and ask those questions. And they just did that in this episode. So I'm like, they're going back. They're going back to the prequels because that's where it all went wrong. There is no New Republic. There is no Return of the Jedi and the new Jedi Order unless we ask these questions. We have to go back to the prequels to solve it. And this episode asks all of those vital questions in those flashback sequences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why I have that hope that you guys will all be laughing at me next week, maybe.
Well, we'll see. All right, that's quite a call.
So, but they might move away from some of it to introduce Grand Admiral Thrawn and really settle into the show's its own conflicts. But they've opened a door, in my opinion, in the right place, The World Between Worlds, in the show that they said they would, from the writers that said they would, or that was rumored to said they would, and they're addressing the questions that they would have to address if they're going to try to reset this. So there's suddenly a lot that lined up. It was like ding, 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 ding for me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel as if there was a lot. I was satisfied with seeing Anakin in that form and in that way, and helping Ahsoka with the things that she had to go through, and getting a little bit more context for what's going on in her mind. the whole situation with her then coming back to life. I thought that was a creative way of doing visually bringing the water slowly up, and I thought that was really great. I just had a problem when it came to the space whales. Yeah, that was a space whales. But I also did like the fact that she went and she got one of those half of the sphere and listened to see if she could hear what happened or find out what happened. I like that, using the force in that way. There were a lot of little pieces I thought were great. There's also, I have Carson Teva there, who I actually really love. I love that
Oh, you like
character.
Carson Teva a lot?
Yes, I do. I really think he's a good man, but I was really disappointed how he didn't seem to have agency this time around. Like, he's volunteering. He could get in trouble, right? He can lose his status, and so the whole time, he seemed to be like nagging the whole time instead of like making a conscious choice to be we're gonna stay until we find her. Like, I needed him to be a hero a little bit, in this, and I just felt like he wasn't written as good as he should have been written, in this.
He had that one awkward line where I think Hu Yang was like, Jason has abilities, and he's like, okay, and he walks off. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah, they don't know what to do with his dialogue. They want him there, but they don't know what to do with his dialogue. It's just kind of weird. And the banter that he was having with Hera was I was just kind of confused. I was like, he's volunteering. Why are you talking down to him? So it was just kind of weird. I think he could be a really good character because he's sort of the everyman in a way. He's like the everyman, but also like he's the one who can do something. He's just the guy who can do something in this situation and make choices toward doing good. And I just really wish they had given him a little bit more of a heroics dialogue.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess now that you say it, they could have had him and Hera discuss how they were going to disobey the Rebel Alliance or the New Republic, which gives them both kind of, put their necks on the line. With disobedience. She's like, once a rebel, always a rebel. I'm like, not when you're a general. That's called treason. Oh, man.
Yeah.
She's like deploying like military forces without permission. This is not a good precedent.
Yeah. And I didn't mind how they used Jason Syndulla. I was like, oh, okay, well, he's actually useful. But I guess it looks like they're setting up possibly Ahsoka training him sometime in the future.
Yeah, I liked Jason. I did not like that Hera could hear the lightsabers. Remember, he's like, listen to the way.
Well, remember.
Oh, and she hears them? I don't remember that. She does.
So he's like,
he hears them.
He was cool. He's like, Mom, I can hear something on the waves. It's lightsabers. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then he's like, listen. And she's like, leave me alone, to Teva.
Yeah.
And then she concentrates and you can hear, whoom, whoom. And I'm like, she can hear that? Like, is she good with the Force? Or is he giving her like Force credits so that she can spend on this?
According to Ahsoka earlier in the season, and everybody has a little bit of the Force in them, right?
Yeah, which is probably better than the midichlorians.
Just close your eyes; you'll be able to hear lightsabers from.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about Hera, but I could get over that.
Yeah.
But to your, I like Jason. I thought he was done well.
Yeah, I think I mean, I would have liked it if just to make sense for him to be there. Maybe he asked to come along. She said no, and in the middle of the flight, there he is, like he just shows up, and I told you not to come along. Like he stows away on the ship.
Like Ken did to Barbie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have worked a lot better than him, like, being her co-pilot. It's kind of weird.
Well, I think they're jumping. Wait, she stayed behind though, right? Wait.
Oh, yeah, she stayed behind. Yeah. In
with
fact,
Jason?
yeah.
Okay.
It was only Huyang and Ahsoka that went to the other galaxy.
Wow. Yeah, and it's a pretty bad. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of fear on Ahsoka's face. I mean, that's like me putting you in like a slingshot retro and be like, okay, we're sending you over there to Spain. And you'd be like, all right, let's do it. I'd be like, are we sure this works?
Yeah, in the mouth of a whale.
Yeah, I'm watching that sequence now. So we're flying by the whales, the squid with squid tentacles. But okay, because the ring has already jumped. So the only people who know where they've gone are the whales.
Well, yeah, she's not even sure if the whales know exactly where they went.
Right. She's even unclear as to whether or not the whales know. That's right.
Yeah. There's the unfortunate coincidence that Thrawn's location is the exact location of the only hyperspace jumping species migration pattern. And it's crazy if you think about, like, they're like, what's the chances of life on another planet? And they're like astronomical or whatever. And there's trillions of systems in a single galaxy. Like, it's 1 in a trillion, or possibly 1 in 80 trillion, that the Purgils would land where Thrawn went. So that's why they never tied it in that map with the Staff of Ra plot, with the Purgils, with Grand Admiral Thrawn. So it's a hard ask.
Messy. It's very, very messy. Like
that's a great word.
Yeah, there's the continuity is just all over the place. People were just, whoever's like, we've got these brilliant scenes inside of this dreamscape, and then we come out of the dreamscape and it's just a mess.
I know. I'm more sitting here watching. I think I've forgotten parts about this. I mean, these 2 episodes didn't really stick with me. So she's about to get in the whale's mouth.
Yeah, Keith, haven't you ever thought about doing
there's
that
something in this that I just did not stick in my brain, that I'm watching and going, wait a minute. So she summons the whale to get in its mouth.
Yes.
Even did a Purgil whisperer moment where she was like communicating with it. And yeah,
it's very questionable part of this TV show. Very questionable.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
So I reacted strongly to the flashback sequences because my antennas were twitching on the archetypal content there, the underlying meaning of those. And then after that, I fell asleep after Anakin left the episode, and he was like Ahsoka the White. So I was like, yeah, this is great. And then I was like, completely knocked out.
Man.
I was like, so I had to rewind it and watch. And I was like, okay. And even then I had to like really focus to follow along. It just got a little boring again. That's why I didn't give the episode a 10 out of 10. Because you have the whole rest of the episode, which was a little underwhelming, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're so right. The energy went down, the pacing went to a screeching halt. There were some cool moments, like I said, with her trying to find out what happened after her battle with Balin. But at that point, it just crawls along really slowly. You can barely make out what they're doing. And then the space whales, and
I was trying to take.
How come everyone trails
screenshot
off after they say space whales?
Space whale. Look, I like the Purgles. I think they're cool, but I just like them from afar, right? As like oh, those magical things that are doing that thing over there. But once you start like involving them into the story, and like we're gonna hang out inside their mouth, and it's just like it becomes too ridiculous.
Well, what's funny is I don't mind like you said, there is a certain coolness or majesticness to the imagery of them in hyperspace and stuff. So I kind of like the Purgils, but I suddenly found myself having to defend them to people that didn't like them, and I didn't like having to do that.
It's like, well, actually, I can't defend the fact that they're in the story.
Totally. I was like, don't make me defend the space whales.
Trying to take a screen capture of this, but it won't let me take a screen capture of Disney Plus, of course. And I was trying to find this, but like another picture, but I can't because I don't even know what to look up. But the fish guy on the bridge of is it Home One or whatever the capital star?
Yeah, I think
this is a very distracting person on board the bridge. This you should just I understand they're trying to make it look, have an alien on this ship, and I realize this is a bit down the weeds, but we're talking about how this episode, I think you're completely right, Doug, from the archetypical perspective, and I will talk about getting the scenes that wanted and are there, and then we get some weirdness at the end of the show, and the really weird alien fish guy that is standing next to the captain on this bridge. It's definitely distracting as I look at this. It's one of those things like, okay, we either need to come up with, because he's also completely just a person, except for this completely wacky fish head. Right? These eyes. It's like, okay, we either need to just have this be a person, because he's also not doing anything. He's just standing there. We either need to have this a person standing here, or we need to come up with a more subdued kind of alien.
So if you were on the bridge of Home One, you might not follow an order because you were distracted.
Well, as I think James is pointing out, this guy is distracting.
It's a trap.
In a universe where I know there are Mon Calamari walking around, and a Mon Calamari would have been less distracting than this fish head guy on the bridge.
I will say it was a cool scene that when the Purgil came off the planet and they started passing the New Republic ships, the Republic ships were coming in as the Purgils were coming out. That was a cool scene. I thought.
Yeah, I did like that. Yeah.
But I there should have been some dialogue with like, wait a second, you're going to go in its mouth and you're going to jump to a galaxy. Did I hear this right? Are you going to be like, what if it jumps and you just stay right there? There was no discussion about how inertia works or any of that.
How clear are we that they go to the other galaxy? We know that?
We know that from Rebels.
Okay, you know that from Rebels. Okay, I was about to say, I'm not sure that we know that from the show.
We don't.
This is Rebels season 5.
So
yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and Clone Wars season 8, at least in this episode. So as far as I understand, because I did not rewatch Rebels recently, and Retro, maybe you remember better than I would. I think Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn jump into hyperspace in a Purgil, right? And disappear?
Yeah. Didn't the Purgils, didn't they invade the ship that they were on? And then they all wrapped themselves around them. And then they went into, whatever galaxy.
That sounds right to me. Something along those lines. And
they did. They took them away from the Star Wars present galaxy into some other galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, you know how you could have had them watching a video feed of this. This is the last transmission from Thrawn. Ezra's on that ship. These are called Purgils. It's a new species we discovered. Have some sort of dialogue to where we watch and follow this action and then show them jump into hyperspace. A, that would desensitize us to the fact that these things can jump into hyperspace. B, it would give us some plot and understanding. Yeah. We would know how Ezra disappeared. why Thrawn disappeared, why Thrawn is where the Purrgil migrate. I mean, this solves a lot.
Yeah.
But they didn't do any of that.
Grand Admiral Thrawn. He is located at the space whale migration pattern location.
Well, it's like sea turtles going back to a certain beach to, lay eggs. These Purrgils always go to this one system.
I know. I was just watching that, James. These Purrgil have baleen, right? Exactly like krill. You would expect for are there space krill? Like, we have some other questions about these things because that's exactly right. They've got baleen for that. Like, what did these guys?
Isn't baleen like specifically an evolutionary trait for salt water?
Right, because because you take in a bunch of, and then you blow all the water out through your baleen to capture the krill and the shrimp and whatever else it is. And so that's how these, yes. So did they, as Table Piece is saying, did they say they're going to another galaxy? Are they bringing I don't know how to pronounce this, the Yuuzhan
Vong?
Yeah.
They're from the
I know
Star
who
Wars.
they are, but
they did say they're going to another galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So episode 4 ends with the bad guys jumping into hyperspace when the super jump into the other galaxy. And then episode 5 ends with the good guys jumping into hyperspace inside the Purrgil. So luckily, we have 2 super jumping hyperspace situations capable of going back to back. It's like back to back.
Why didn't the bad guys just get in the whale?
What's that?
Why did the bad guys go to all the trouble of building that giant hyper loop?
They must not have known.
If they could have just gotten in the whale.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have this one thread, you don't need this ancient temple with the map, with the staff of Ra, bing, like there, right there, and then they're all pointing to the same thing. Like, that's stupid to me. I really don't like that.
just terrible, messy. What a hot mess.
I realize I'm being hypercritical here, but
it deserves hypercritical.
Well, okay.
And you're making sense. It's not like you're not making sense. I've said this since the beginning because there are a lot of people. I talked to some people who are very much, they saw Clone Wars and Rebels when they were very young.
Oh.
So they love every single minute of this show. They just love it. It's just, I look at them and I'm just like, I want to feel like you do, because I've watched those shows, but I was an adult when I saw those. So I don't have the same emotional a connection to it like they do. So it is for me very tough to really like this show because of how scattered it is, and how we have gotten very little character development. We're scraping for character development in this story. We're just having a lot of people talk to each other, and there's no context for, like, okay, what is this in reference to? You don't know. Like, they're talking about the past and you're like, okay, what happened in the past? Show me something. Like, give me a flashback.
You have to set these things up. If you're going, let me just say this. If we're all sitting around a conference room and we're discussing this and I'm like, hold on a second, you're going to introduce space whales and witches. You're going to have to do some serious exposition. You're going to have to, because those are hard sells. And like I said, the Purrgils were introduced slowly with major plot lines in Rebels to the point where we could accept them better, I think, in the animated series. And the same thing with the Witches of Dathomir. They were introduced so integrally to the story that we end up letting them into our world because it was good writing that brought them in. And so, like, I love the Witches of Dathomir. I love Mother Townsend and Asajj Ventress and the Savage Opress storyline. Like, but they just went right into it here. And the people that are criticizing it because they're confused are right. Totally right to do so.
Yeah.
because they have not
They're-
set these up.
They have not. And it's very interesting, just like conversing about Anakin and who he might be
Oh, yes.
is something that is like only paying off now for something that happened in Clone Wars. Like, wait, what? We got to go all the way back in the archives to try to piece something together. And
Retro, you should post that video in the chat, because Retro has a theory.
Well, I might have to do it because it's a link. I'll do it though, because it's in the private chat. I'll do it.
Retro, do you want to say your theory?
Well,
The Anakin theory.
yeah, the Anakin theory. Well, it's not my. I think I'll give that to the internet. But that he could be the father, because he uses direct language that the father used in Clone Wars, and there's also another line that the father used in the Clone Wars where he says that they can take on any form. Let me see if I wrote it down here. Yeah, they take on many forms, and they shape. He says the shapes we take on are merely reflections of the life force around us. So I don't know if he could, be using Anakin's body or Anakin's memories in order to do this teaching, if you will, with Ahsoka. So who knows? They didn't explain it, so we're left to our devices.
Yeah. Well, and for those who don't know, the father is father of Mortis. What's that?
I said I don't. Please explain.
Well, so I'm a fan of the Clone Wars. I watched every single episode, but I wasn't a fan of these. It's called the Mortis series, and I think there's 3 episodes where Anakin and Ahsoka. I don't even remember who goes, but I know Anakin goes, and he meets
Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan.
Okay, that's right. And they meet these like gods of the Force, and there's a father of Mortis. And then there's a son who represents the dark side, in a sense, of Mortis, and then the daughter who represents like the light side. And to me, this was like one step too far for me to really feel like it was Star Wars, like they had gone kind of way out there.
Oh, yeah.
And so when someone started, and I have heard similar, I haven't heard exactly what you shared, but similar theories that this could be the Mortis father. I was like, please don't go there. Please, like we've already got space whales, like
Yeah, they did not specify, so it's probably it was probably just Dream Anakin, so.
Well, I think my theory is that it is Anakin in some form, like the actual Anakin Skywalker in some form. He does have knowledge of events, like there's that scene where Ahsoka's like, "I'm not going to fight you," and he goes, "I've heard that before." Obviously, he's referencing Luke Skywalker, who's like, "I will not fight you, Father," in Return of the Jedi. And only Anakin knows that.
Yeah.
Anakin was there. Ahsoka wasn't. So it's not perfect. Someone even said that Ahsoka could have, or Luke could have told Ahsoka by this point, maybe. But at least in terms of canon, they have not established that. So as far as I could tell, that is something only Anakin should know.
Yes.
That Luke used that strategy.
Yes. I agree 100%. And the thing is that they have not, and of course they have not said anything about it. So it is it is unfair for them to leave us to try to figure this out. But at least hopefully by the end of the show we shall know exactly who he is.
So I'm hoping, and again, grain of salt. Like I know that I'm out on my own here. I'm hoping that the last 3 episodes are going to be dynamite, consistent storytelling. I almost feel like Filoni had 4 episodes for us, and Lucasfilm wanted 8.
Oh yeah.
And so they cram this garbage into the first 4 episodes because it doesn't feel like the same writing in the first couple episodes as we got in the end of, because even the sense where Balon was like, your legacy is garbage, and that shows a sense that there's continuity in the writing moving forward. So I almost feel like Filoni took over at the end of episode 4, and I could be wrong, and that this is truly moving in a clear marching orders heading forward. That's all I could say.
Yeah.
Is cross my fingers and hope that the last 3 stick the landing on this, because if they do, then Ahsoka could open up an alternate path. I even came up with a someone asked me, who was that? My dad. He's like, well, how would you do, how would you do that? And I was like, you know what I would do? I would have Rey Skywalker close it off. Have Daisy Ridley come back and seal off the World Between Worlds, closing off the sequel trilogy as like a self-sacrifice. Like, let her go out in a blaze of glory. Let her do it. That way it feels like that she heroically... So what I was going to do is have Palpatine at the end of Rise of Skywalker, which I don't even consider it real canon, but try to get into the World Between Worlds to live again. And they fight him off in the World Between Worlds and don't let him come in. They close it off. And when they go back, the only portal that's left open is the one after Return of the Jedi. And now that we've definitely sealed off Palpatine, we move forward on this other path, and we can never do this again.
Oh man!
On the subject of the hypercritical, and this did come up last time, is that what in the world the New Republic rank insignia are? I did look that up. Because it's so distracting. I put up a screen capture, but I can't. And of course you can't find anything on the internet, but we had talked about the weird dice things that is on, Hera's chest, and it's on all of them. So it's clearly the New Republic rank insignia that are these shiny metal boxes that have the big dice-like pips on them. And actually it looks like they're throat lozenges on a thing to be popped out. If I had to hand you some throat lozenges, here you go. That's what it looks like is on their chest. And it is so distracting. I don't know how anybody looked at that and went, this is an okay thing to put, because there's no chance that they would have thought this was like, if they're actually their military, that here's what we'll do for our rank insignia. That makes no sense. It also makes no sense to look at this giant distracting thing on their costumes. It is distracting. That's a good thing to happen. And it was brought up that they are wearing General Madine's uniform, because we've seen the uniform in Return of the Jedi. But but this was brought up that no, it's what Madine is wearing. It is Madine's uniform, but Madine is not wearing that weird thing on his chest. I was like, surely I would remember that if that was on his chest. So I did go and look that up. So you can go and look that up. Madine does have a patch on his chest, but it's got other things on it, which are much more subdued, and so I don't know what they're supposed to be. But he does have something on his chest. It is not whatever they put on their chest here in this. That look,
well, and quite honestly, the New Republic looks terrible in this.
I know. I don't even think that uniform looks very good. Yeah. I mean, it works for General Madine on that, and you could probably still do that and carry that forward. So I'm not, but. Once again, everybody looks so fresh and so new. It's not all that, and they do even weirder things with it, with that rank insignia.
The New Republic is really weird. Even in like Andor, Mandalorian, like every time I've seen the New Republic,
It's changed. It's like go if you Google it, it's changed. Right, it does. But it's what is being worn in the original trilogy is not what's being worn now. The commander of the Hoth base is wearing a dice lozenge thing. Okay, well I'm gonna look that up. That's who is that? What is that?
Deck officer?
No, not deck officer.
General Riken.
Riken. Thank you. Yeah, General Riken. Okay, let's see, General Riken.
Yeah, and you'd almost think that the Rebel Alliance would want a less militarized look anyway, now that they're the New Republic. These guys would have a pretty...
is. Oh, you're right. If you look up General Riken, he is wearing... I had never noticed this before, but I guess that's where it comes from. Because Madine is not. Yeah, Madine is not. But General Riken is wearing a throat lozenge. 5. He is. So okay. So it came from someplace. It did. Riken wears that. Okay.
Oh, man.
He does. Yep.
So it obviously didn't have that same influence on me. I guess I never thought that was his rank insignia. I don't know, but it obviously didn't distract me.
Well, you know what?
General Riken. It's not as shiny, by the way. Just
you know what? You were probably absorbed in the storytelling of Empire Strikes Back.
Exactly.
But that's fantastic. So there we go. So thank you, Sable. Yes, General Riken, who does wear
those
that.
insignias with boring storytelling.
Right. You got to get one of the two right.
You can't miss both.
I mean, I can believe that. Like, okay, if we're at the Hoth base and we have nothing here, and I need to construct something to be my right, like I only have these throat lozenges. So, all right, I'll staple them to my chest, and that will let everybody know I am the general. I would get it then. If by the time you're in the New Republic, you think they could have come up with something else.
Yeah, the rebellion was a low budget operation back then.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I don't remember it being distracting either.
You could say that's like Princess Leia. Like, did Princess Leia make him a general? Like, we might as well just say that because she needs to have done something. And she's like, so maybe Princess Leia was the one who elevated him to the rank of general. And she realized, oh my God, I don't have anything like to hand him.
You think someone
How about these throat lozenges? And then you just...
there would have to be a Heath in the rebellion who's like, guys, we got to change these insignias. Someone in the galaxy agrees with Heath.
So somebody like the Imperials have the squares, but that's cooler than.
I always thought theirs looked like buttons,
Yeah, but
buttons.
that was.
I like them.
The Imperial rank is cooler, but I suppose. So I wonder if somebody thought, well, if the Imperials wear squares for their ranks, I wonder if somebody thought then the rebels need to wear circles.
If someone asked me, I'd be like, I would think the rebellion would be very low key on the military look. They grew up in an era where the military dictatorship that blew up planets just passed. So you'd think that they would be a little bit like, let's tone down the military, no epithets, no insignias. Yeah. Let's have it. Let's tone all that down.
Yeah.
So
all right.
I was just going to ask. We don't have to talk about it, but did you want me to share? I went back to my old notes on the Clone Wars on which episodes are worth watching. Because the Clone Wars it's 7 seasons, the last season being Disney. It is a mixed bag. The animation gets steadily better through the seasons. So it starts kind of here and it becomes, I think, excellent. I think the animation ends up becoming excellent. And there are episodes that are for kids. Like they're unwatchable for an adult. Like R2-D2 steals fruit from a palace. And I'm like, what am I doing watching this? Like, this has nothing to do with Star Wars.
I'm perfectly happy to go into it. I don't know if you have time, Retro Nerd Girl. I do have time. So that would be a good time that you're saying if you need to get caught up like I do, you're about to expound what is that we're doing, what Clone Wars you should be watching?
Yes.
Okay.
So
are you able to stay with us, Retro Nerd Girl? Or you need to
Yeah,
okay.
I'm good.
All right, take it away then, Doug. Go for it.
Okay, so
we don't want you to develop these notes for nothing. We like notes around here. So we got
yeah, me too. I'm writing notes too.
Let me see if I can present this. What do I click? Slides or video file? Share screen? How do I share like a Word document?
It's probably easiest to go share screen then and just click your window, your Word document window.
Okay, let me see if I could do that then. Share screen. Where is it? Oh, here we go. This. Share.
Okay, and I think I might have to put it up.
I might have
to. Okay, do you see it on the screen? You're going to need to increase its size and adjust. Bring your whole window larger.
I can't. That's as big as my window gets.
Okay. Well,
I'll
zoom
see
in
if I
a bit
can
more.
zoom in here.
Okay.
So, so I went through and I tried to find the episodes that I thought were worth your time if you are a fan of Star Wars. I do not include any ridiculous episodes. And there are plenty. There are a lot. And then there are good episodes. There are decent episodes. I tried to eliminate all those and really focus on the core parts of what I thought the Clone Wars did right. And I stylized it so there was a gold medal episode for the season, silver and bronze. Those are the 3 best episodes for the whole season. And then there are series, like a 2 to 4 episode series that some of them were very, very good. So anyway, I'll just recap as quick as I can. And then, by the way, Retro, you might have episodes that you've seen that I didn't include that you remember that are important. I actually went back and added the Mortice series after we talked because I realized people might be interested in that just based on our discussion.
Yeah, yeah. That would be it. I would trust your opinion here.
Okay. Well,
it's been a while.
It made me think. Yeah, it's been a while for me too because I haven't seen every single episode, but I did go back and see a bunch of these. So episode 1, the best episode of the season I thought was Jedi Crash. There is an awesome battle that takes place in the atmosphere. So it's like blue skies with Venerator class Star Destroyers. Ahsoka Tano is in it. She's very heroic. There's very stylized like animation in it. I did this just for this YouTube video. So anyway, those, if you want to just write them down and then watch them, go for it. I'll just explain why I picked.
I'll clip this section.
Okay. Yeah. Season 1, there's the Malevolence series, which is the early on in the season 1, they're fun 3-part episode. Anakin Skywalker is front and center. Count Dooku is front and center. And the clones are front and center. So it's a good, solid series. Unless I put gold on it, it's not phenomenal, but it's really good. And then likewise, episodes 19, 20, and 21 tie into Ahsoka episode 5. That's called the Ryloth series. And Ahsoka takes command of her 1st battalion, and she makes some egregious errors that get clones killed. So in that scene, if you remember from Ahsoka, the series that we just talked about, it's not just clone troopers running. You see Twi'leks running, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see clones and Twi'leks both running toward the horizon. That's because of this series, the Ryloth series. That's the battle that she's reliving. Is from season 1 of the Clone Wars. Really, really good. That's the series that made me actually really like Ahsoka Tano for sure, because she takes her lumps big time in this. And then season 2, I love Landing at Point Rain. They actually go back to Geonosis and redo the battle that ended Attack of the Clones. They go back and redo it, and I think this battle is better. It almost has like World War II tropes. You see like Y-wings in formation, all take off and come down. They hit flak. There's major dogfighting in the atmosphere. There's massive land battles. All the Jedi generals get shot down in their gunships. They have to fight with lightsabers on the ground. It's great, big time warfare action in Landing at Point Rain. I love it. And then Cat and Mouse, which is a good one for Anakin. It's like a submarine battle between Anakin and a very cunning separatist leader. And then here's where we get the Mandalore series for the must-see. This is a 3-part series that introduces Mandalore. It introduces Duchess Satine, which is Bo-Katan's sister, by the way. I think people are starting to know Bo-Katan from The Mandalorian, played by Katie Sackhoff. Her sister was the figurehead, the head of state of Mandalore. And there's a little romantic tie-in between her and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
And I think it's done very well. Specifically in later series, but that 3-part series introduces you to the situation on Mandalore, which becomes more and more important to Star Wars going forward, to Duchess Satine, eventually to Bo-Katan, and then to the very interesting non-attachment romance between the Duchess and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then season 3, Gold medal goes to ARC Troopers. There is a 2-part series. So the must-see is episodes 1 and 2 of season 3, the Battle of Camino series. The Separatists lead an assault, a big, large-scale attack on the planet Camino. And the clones are like, this is our home. So to them, it's personal. And there's this 2-part series of a major invasion effort by the Separatists on Camino. And it is awesome. I love it. Asajj Ventress is in it. Obi-Wan Kenobi is in it. It's a great series. And then episodes 12, 13, and 14, this is where the Witches of Dathomir come from. The Night Sisters series, I love this 3-part series. Dooku is in it, and the last episode 14, you see it's got a silver medal, has a lightsaber battle in it, which is one of the best in Star Wars. It's got Anakin, Obi-Wan, Count Dooku, and then 2 of Dooku's apprentices. And the Sith are fighting each other. The Jedi come in, they're fighting each other. So there's 5 people involved in this lightsaber battle, and it's choreographed. It's awesome. It's really good. And then based on Retro, her contribution to the alternate theories, or possibly even the occurrence of what's going on in Ahsoka, the Mortis series, episodes 15, 16, and 17. This gets into what might tie into the world between worlds and the kind of like Force gods out there. I wasn't a big fan of this, but it's worth watching to understand possibly where some of Star Wars is headed. Season 4, best episode, The Darkness on Umbara. You want to see a great freaking battle in Star Wars with the Clone Wars? Remember, these are set piece battles between 2 equal forces. This one's interesting because Darkness on Umbara is the most Empire-like we've ever seen the Galactic Republic. They come in and smash this planet. Obi-Wan even uses language like, we have to conquer this planet and hold it. So they're becoming very militaristic. And this is also the first planet that we've seen them invade where there's like human-like people, not alien or, droids. Like they're fighting people and just wiping them out. So it's a hell of a series, and it's an awesome long-winded battle that Anakin leads. And it's a 4-part series that really hints at how the Jedi are starting to go the wrong path during this period. And then also the Darth Maul series. This is where Darth Maul is returned. It's two episodes. They're good episodes. They're not phenomenal episodes, but Darth Maul is so well acted. I think he actually won an Emmy for voice acting in these series because he's so troubled and complex, and they bring him back. I think I think they do a good job of bringing Maul back in those 2 episodes. And then Maul's part of the series from here on out. And then season 5, this is some of the best Star Wars there is. The Ahsoka Tano series. It's a 4-part series that ends season 5. Some of the best Star Wars there is. I can't recommend it enough. It foreshadows all the events of Revenge of the Sith. Ahsoka Tano becomes a refugee. Am I saying that right? Of the Republic. The Republic turns against her, and she is abandoned by the Jedi Order. You just watch it. It's unbelievable. Oh, yeah. It is so good. And then also in this, right before the Ahsoka Tano series, a 3-part series called the Mandalorian Civil War series. And this is where you start to get into the nitty-gritty of what's happening in the Mandalorian even right now, the Civil War on Mandalore. It's freaking amazing. And Darth Maul's at the heart of it. He's a major player in this series. Duchess Satine is in this. Obi-Wan Kenobi is in it again. You are strongly introduced to Bo-Katan in this. She becomes front and center, and you start to learn some of the politics of Mandalore in that. Season 6 is a very shortened season. Disney bought Lucasfilm and canceled the Clone Wars, and people were pretty upset about it because it was actually growing in viewership. So they released like 13 episodes that were already done, and they just called it the Lost series. So Not much here, but there's some that are worth watching. There is a Yoda series here where Yoda has kind of a similar archetypal dream quest, you could say, on Mortis. And I took out of it that he was blamed for part of the fall of the Republic, that he was too arrogant to have noticed the dark side. So it's interesting. And then finally, this is the Disney Plus version of Clone Wars, some of which was as good as it gets for Star Wars. The final series, the Order 66 series, the final 4 episodes are some of the best Star Wars out there. Ahsoka Tano is front and center. They actually overlap scenes with Revenge of the Sith. They have the same dialogue, same music. They overlap it. It's just excellent. Like I can't recommend it enough. And then of course it's okay. The Bad Batch series is the first 4 episodes. It's okay. It's not bad, but it will introduce the Bad Batch, which ends up getting their own spinoff. So
yeah.
Anyway, I think if you watch these episodes, not only will you understand Star Wars a lot better from today's perspective, you're going to get some awesome Star Wars in there.
Could you send me this list? Because when I clip this, I'll also put this in the description if that's okay.
Absolutely. I'll definitely send it. And these are good. I mean, you will be treated to some amazing like storyboarding action. They have all the sounds of Star Wars. They use it all so well. So I think I saw James Bacon. This is what the prequel should have been. What I've tried to put in here.
Yes.
Because this is conflict, Heath. This is the Separatists and the Galactic Republic slugging it out on a galactic scale. They're equally matched. Remember, the original series was an insurgency, the rebellion. So you had David and Goliath. This is the Republic on the Republic, pounding each other away. So they're huge set piece battles. And God, I wish the movies went here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what else?
That was it for me.
Yeah. These will help you with, this will help you with not just the Ahsoka show, but also if you're having problems following Mandalorian season 3, this will really help understand what's going on a little bit better.
Yeah. And entertain you.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like when I'm up late at night sometimes, that you know how it is, it's late and you just want to watch some of your favorite scenes from a movie or whatever. I will sit there and go through some of these each episode's only 22 minutes, guys.
This is on Disney Plus now? I guess it is, right?
What's that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's on Disney Plus now because I have Disney Plus because we've been watching Ahsoka, so I got it this month. So okay. I need to watch Andor then, and I can do this.
Andor is good. It is slow paced. The writing is good. It's like the most serious Star Wars you can get. There's like no aliens in it, no lightsabers, no Jedi. So all of that's stripped out. That said, they wrote it very well.
I loved it.
Yeah. There was some Andy Serkis, I thought, was amazing.
It's about people.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have once I watch it, I'll have you back, Retro Nerd Girl. I mean, Doug too. But if you want to talk about Andor, because I know you've seen it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I do need to see it.
Yeah, Andor's like I keep hearing it described as the greatest show that no one watched, which is a shame.
Well, that's probably why. I mean, I'm in that situation. I mean, I just stopped watching Star Wars. I mean, I probably would not have watched Star Wars again after the first couple of Kenobi that I watched and then stopped watching. Oh, I gave Kenobi a couple of episodes and then stopped. And
I was so hurt with Kenobi.
But you liked Kenobi, Retro Nerd Girl, you said.
It brought me back because I was even worse. Like I refused to watch anything Star Wars, and then Kenobi brought me back because I did like Anakin and Kenobi, and I was hoping to see both of them in this, and they did deliver that, not entirely the way I wanted to, but it was a chance to see Ewan McGregor again, and it was just great. I loved him. I love him. So
I liked episode 1. I thought episode 1 was a good start, and then I thought they made some really weird choices.
They did.
And went off in a weird direction.
Well, I do want to say, Retro Nerd Girl, you were talking about how you had been talking to a different group of people who had watched Clone Wars and Rebels as kids, and then just
Mhm.
absolutely loved Ahsoka as a result.
Uh.
And you can't discount that, because I had also heard from people regarding Kenobi who their experience with Star Wars as a kid was the prequels. And it seemed like,
Yeah.
as I was watching comments on Kenobi, that if you were a kid when the prequels were coming out and that was your Star Wars, it seemed like there were a lot of comments on YouTube and on Reddit and whatever that, oh my God, this is everything I want it to be. So it is possible that they connect with different groups of people, but not everybody. I mean, sometimes you can't connect with everybody. So that could be the case.
Yes, and that's why that show actually brought me back to starting to watch more Star Wars content again, because I was just like, okay, so Star Wars can mean different things to different people. You can like different things about it, and it is no longer the Star Wars that I remember and loved when I was a kid. It's just gone. I mean, we've come a long way from like the farmer boy who just wanted to be a pilot to space whales. Like, it just like, what happened between these these concepts? So I'm just taking what I can out of Star Wars and enjoying what I can. I'm learning a lot about story. I'm learning a lot about like all of the mistakes that happened that I see along the way that they're making. The same with the Mandalorian season 3. And then also I can still appreciate Mandalorian season 1 and 2 and how good those were.
Yeah.
And also recently I watched Secret Wars, which is the Marvel show, and that was just a complete and utter disaster.
Really?
Oh, it just was. They just kept spinning the story, and I'm wondering, and I if this is just the way Disney is having their writing teams work now, where they're like, okay, so we have got an idea, and let's try to extend it. It could have been an hour and a half, but let's try to extend it to 8 episodes or 6 episodes, and it just feels like we're not actually getting story with any of these series.
There has been a regression in storytelling ability. I think, honestly, Heath, Retro, and me, the reason we're here together tonight is because we grew up in an era with such good storytelling that we've never forgotten it. We can't get over it. Retro,
Yes.
yes, right. You'll have a watch party on David Bowie's Labyrinth or Willow, and people come. We want to relive it because, and while we're reliving it, we can unpack it, and it all still works. It all still holds up. And I'm like, these movies today, you're not going to have YouTubers 30 years from now wanting to unpack The Last Jedi because they loved it so much, like, because the storytelling isn't good. So we have regressed culturally somewhere, in that they're producing stories that don't make sense, are not archetypally resonating, and are meaningless. They don't have any meaning to them.
Yeah. And anytime they do seem like they're going towards the area of being very meaningful, like that dream sequence and all that stuff that was going on there, then we go to the silly. Then we go to the silly. I won't say it. I won't say it.
I know they are, aren't they? They're going to ruin it. They're going to be like, see, that meant nothing. Oh, please don't do it. Don't. I'm telling you, I could see it. I know what you're saying, and I could see it in my head. I go, I'm going to tune in for episode 6, here we go. And then they're going to say something, and it's going to jar me. I'm going to get nervous and guarded, and then I'm going to be forced to be like I'm being dragged behind a car.
No. But to be honest with you, I felt like that on episode 4. I was like, okay, they're doing so well. I hope they don't drop the ball in episode 5. And I was like, oh, good. They came through with episode 5 with some some substance, and so maybe we're on the uptick. I'll be very.
Well, maybe we'll have to get back together for episode 6 after Tuesday.
Yeah, almost as a almost like group therapy.
I know. We need counseling.
Tuesday, James Bacon and Sable Phoenix are going to be with us for a discussion of From Where You Dream.
Oh, wow.
So, but then also Ahsoka episode 6 comes out on Tuesday, so I probably won't watch it that night. Doug will, I know. After he gets off the stream,
I'll watch it, and man, I've never been more nervous to watch an episode. I will say this: there is a chance that episode 6 doesn't follow up directly with the Anakin plot line. Mm-hmm. There's a chance that this jumps into the Thrawn action, so
that would be good.
Right.
Well, it is needed.
Yeah,
I'm right, because that's conflict. There's a chance that Thrawn is excellent. So
I hope so.
Please, just throw us a bone.
Yeah, throw us a bone.
Bring up. I'll put out the links again. Doug, do you want to wrap up who you are? I'll put up yours and then do the same thing.
Real quick, Keith, I sent you that list if you want. I emailed it to you. Yeah, I'm an author.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Like we were just saying, I love stories. And what's interesting is I wrote this book here, which takes place in the 6th century. It's about a Byzantine empress who was a prostitute, and she became an empress. And she actually wrote some of the most breakthrough laws that would be considered women's rights way back in the 6th century. And she did it by herself, a force unto herself. And what's interesting is my love of storytelling that comes from Star Wars and Star Trek and all of these movies, Terminator, all these movies that we talk about. I used a lot of those same archetypes to help tell her story. And it's amazing how you wouldn't even know unless you're in this group. You wouldn't even know. I even have a Luke Skywalker moment in her final showdown where she throws away her lightsaber. But the women who have read this book don't know that, and they still respond to it because it's archetypally sound. And anyway, I'm real proud of the book, and I'm really proud of The Heroine's Labyrinth, which is coming out in February of 2024.
Oh, wow.
Can't wait.
All right, and Retro Nerd Girl, here is your channel. I'll put the link in here. You want to
tell
everybody about it?
Well, yeah, this is my YouTube channel. Basically, I do movie reviews. My last one was of a Russian movie called Vi that was done in the 60s. Very interesting horror movie. On Wednesdays, I do a morning show live. I'll probably be doing the Ahsoka episode 6. On Fridays, I also do a live show. That show will be about animated, family-friendly movies this week. And Saturday, I will be doing a watch party for Lost Boys this week.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
The link is in the chat. So if you want more Retro Nerd Girl, there's plenty more Retro Nerd Girl.
Yes.
I've listened in on some of those, and you know that you're with people that are passionate about storytelling when you listen along. It's awesome.
Awesome. That's great. I have so much fun on my channel. Just so much fun.
Did I see Project X in there?
Yes.
Is that the one with chimpanzees? With Matthew Broderick?
No. This is an older one that was done in the 60s.
1968.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I've seen that one. War of the Worlds?
It's awesome. A good one. Yeah.
Dark Crystal? Oh, that one's great. Willow?
Yeah.
Crom. All right, I'm just going through your banners again. Very cool.
Right. And then everyone, my book that I have is Goodnight Sword. It is my take on Goodnight Moon. It's a children's story. It's the first out in my world that is the Tales of Rabavania. So if you have children in your life who you think are about the right age for Goodnight Moon, but you would much rather them have a medieval fantasy twist, well, then check out Goodnight Sword. I mean, come on. If you're into fantasy and medieval storytelling and all of that, who wouldn't want to read their kid Goodnight Sword? So if you have kids the right age for that, check out Goodnight Sword right here. I'll put this in the Goodnight Sword. You can get it completely free right there at that link. Check out Goodnight Sword. You can download it right now. If you got about to go for bedtime or story time with some kids, you can download it right there. You get a free PDF. It's the whole book. You can do story time tonight. And then I will let you know when the hardbacks go live on Indiegogo if you would like to have a hardback copy of it. And also, you can sign up to get a hardback free the day Indiegogo go live. So that'll be in about 2 or 3 weeks. But if you want it free, you can get the PDF completely free right there. Awesome. All right, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here, Doug and Retro Nerd Girl, and everybody in the chat, everybody who's been here live, and everybody who will be watching on replay. It's been fantastic.
Woo! Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Ahsoka. All right, we'll get back.
Going through the jungle.
Tuesday night, we'll be back for Table Talk. Like I said, with From Where You Dream, all that kind of analysis. But then we'll probably have to get back for Ahsoka episode 6. So. And then plus more Dinner and Board Game to come as well. So I will see everybody on my channel, Heath's Geekverse, the Heath's Geekverse channel. I'll be live tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. for the morning grind. Later, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.